whole lot of hard stuff today. First of all, I'm going to tell you, I can't tell you how much I'm humbled by the fact that so many of you have come. As Sean was telling me the number of restorations, I'm like, you're kidding me. This started out to be a training for 40 people, and it has grown substantially. This is not like a conference where you're going to have all the feel-good kind of stuff. This is a train the trainer. I'm getting old, and it's your turn, okay? And that's why we're doing this. I want you to have a foundation of what it's really like here in Southern California, so that whatever ministry you're in, you have the facts, and you can pick and choose what it is you want to do with your life. People ask me how I got into this. Beats me. I have no way to tell you that. And I retired in 2000. I had a career in international marketing. I had over 3 million frequent flyer miles. Been spoiled all my life, it seems like. Not my early life, but in later life. And in 2008, I was retired, doing the cruise thing and the RV thing and having a great life. And my husband one day, he never wanted to go to church, but he looked over at me and he said, I think we ought to go to church, honey. And I said, what the heck? Okay, since we're in a church. And where did this come from? And we picked the church that we said that in front of. And 1 month later, he found out he had kidney cancer. And but that church had a mission in Cambodia. And with my frequent flyer miles, I had never been to Cambodia. So I began to go to Cambodia, and I worked with Rafa International. If you're looking for an international organization, I served on their board for 10 years. I've been to Cambodia many times. I actually lived there for 4 months at one point. Didn't mean to, worked out that way. Anyway, in 2010, I showed up at a meeting. People say, how did you prepare for this? I showed up. It's that simple. They were having a meeting at Boardwell Park. I never go to Boardwell Park, especially at night. And I went to that meeting, and I was the only audience. 4 speakers and me. And I always say, whoever God wants in the room is in the room. I've spoken to 2 people. I've spoken to 6,000 people. I don't care. If God wants that person in the room, they'll be there. And with that was the beginning of the Riverside County Human Trafficking Task Force. They had gotten a small amount of grant, and because I knew the word trafficking had a K in it, they invited me to be their training and outreach coordinator. And they didn't know what they were getting into, okay? It was actually only one deputy, and he went undercover, and I went to my kitchen table. And until the last couple of years, I've always worked at my kitchen table. And I'm a rabid researcher. That's the thing you're going to find out about me tonight. I spend a lot of time alone. That's why I played the inspirational music. That's what I do when it gets too much. I get up and dance, until I dream a dream. I did it this morning. And, it kind of takes the heavy out of it. And so what has happened now is it has totally grown. When I first started, they said, now, we'll give you a title, but we can't give you any money. You have to raise all your own money and pay all your own way. Well, I'm, retired. Hello, Social Security isn't going to pay for this, okay? And I'm like, I never intended to have a nonprofit, the emphasis on non-profit. And that's how it's been. But God has carried me for 15 years. We're not a big agency. I don't want to be a big agency. This isn't about having a lot of money. This is about using whatever money you give us to change a life somewhere. And since then, I've had tens of thousands of hours of research, which you're going to see here. Everything I do is based on real cases. I am not an activist that walks up and down the street with big numbers. Other people can do that. It's just not who I am. I'm not a victim service provider, okay? I have the greatest amount of respect for those folks. I don't know how they do it all day, every day. I am a law enforcement trainer by trade. I have been post-certified, which is very rare for a civilian. When I met my current husband, I had 8 jobs. I was a terrible widow. I lost my husband in 2017 after 44 years. And I had 2 years of widowhood, and I'm probably the worst widow you ever saw. I was working 90 hours a week. When I met my husband, I had 8 jobs, and he's like, really? You think you have time for a relationship? So yeah, we've made some changes, and so part of what I'm about today is to upload all of this on you, and you can decide what you're going to do about it. So we're going to take a look at a lot of different things. There you go. So Sean's with Love Life, Sean and Jess, and they invited me to do this. So my organization is Million Kids. Not 1 million, not a million, not a bunch of little kids. It's called millionkids.org, not .com. That's a rock band. You don't like them, trust me. That's all of our social media. Okay, so please follow us. I have a private Facebook page. I highly recommend that you get involved with this. Go to millionkids.org, sign up for the newsletter. That'll get you all the Million Kids Missing kids, get you all the case announcements and like that. But I have a private page also. So I'm going to show that to you. I guess that slide's there. It is right there. Million Kids Supporters on Facebook. You have to ask to be let in because I post stuff on there we don't put out to the public. I analyze cases about smuggling and cartels and gangs and things that I can't just release because it's too dangerous. So ask to be admitted, and I will admit you, and you will continue your education after you leave here today. Now, one of the things I did this week is made almost an hour video for you all. It is on YouTube, and it's called Train the Trainer Million Kids. And what I did is a presentation on how you should make a presentation about exploitation. Things to watch out for if you're training in schools, who to train, how to prepare, how to research, all of that kind of thing. So that's free, it's almost an hour, and it's on Facebook, no, not Facebook, it's on YouTube on Train the Trainer on Exploitation. By the way, I see people taking pictures. Take all the pictures you want. I don't usually release my slides because I have contracts with the Department of Justice. But we do have a lady here filming this, and we're probably going to put it on our website. We may sell it so that we can raise some money on it, maybe 10, 15 bucks, we're not sure. But she's recording this. But I tell you this because you can use my slides. If you're going to make your own presentation, don't use my slides. Make your own slides, but you can use my wording. You can use that idea. You can use it to stimulate with you because I want you to be able to go out and do this tens of thousands of times just like I have. So one more thing, insider alerts, if you sign up on our newsletter, you'll get these. These are videos that I make on there to do that. Now I just did something I've never done before. I posted my private email address for you if you want to email me. I usually use Opal at Million Kids. I have 7 email accounts, so I don't give this one out much. I get on average 70 emails an hour. So if I don't answer you right away, but I've got 13 years of research, so I belong to every society you can ever imagine to get their newsletters so that I can stay current. You can laugh at me if you want. Oh, single sounds like a dating site. I never thought I'd be in this business, okay? But on top of it, AOL, really? I mean, this is a person who published a book about technology and the impact on crime, and I'm on AOL. That's why I don't publish it. But I've been on there for 30 years, and so that's my main one for what it's worth. And about 45 minutes, please don't leave, but I am on AM 590, The Answer, every Saturday afternoon. The reason I have that radio show is that I want to educate the public. I want sex buyers to know what's going to happen, especially if they go on some of these Thai massage parlors, and how they're risking their family. I want parents to understand what's going to happen in social media if you don't pay attention, and so that's the purpose of that one. As I said, I am still the training and outreach coordinator for the task force. I'm the oldest living member and also the longest surviving member. I am so proud of them. Absolutely proud of them. I mean that with all my heart. Riverside County is so blessed to have law enforcement and officials who care. When everybody else was defunded, yes, thank you. They are great friends of mine. It helps because I report to one of them. But when everybody else was defunding police, our sheriff literally doubled down along with the Board of Supervisors and built 2 human trafficking task forces. That's unheard of in the nation, unheard of. But we have a corridor coming up from the border over there on the east side of our valley. Almost everyone out there speaks Spanish, and most of them were from that community. We have a district attorney that just really chafes at all the laws that are going on that causes circulation of letting people out early. And so I'm very proud of our organization and to work with them. So I'm going to pick up speed because I'm already behind. I got a lot to cover. There are 254 slides in this deck, so buckle up, okay? We don't have time to take a break, so if you need to go to the bathroom, just stand up and go, because by the time 200 of you go, we won't see you again until dinner time. So here we go. So we're going to cover some unusual things that you might not be expecting, because we have a lot of trafficking in our community that almost nobody acknowledges. Yes, we're going to talk about our teenagers. Absolutely, we're going to get to there. But I also want to talk about what's happening with open borders and what is happening in foreign national trafficking in our community. And we cannot pretend that's not happening and keep looking the other way. We'll look at a little bit of labor trafficking, domestic sex trafficking. To make it clear, foreign national are people that are from outside the U.S. that are brought into our communities that are being sold or trafficked, are being in indentured servitude. And then domestic is our kids right here from the U.S. that are being trafficked. I also, as many of you might know, I raised them because some of you donated. We took 6 years of my life to raise the funding for a movie called Sextortion, The Hidden Pandemic. It is available on Amazon, iTunes, and Apple TV. I'll show you a trailer on it as we go, but we are going to talk about what's going on in sextortion and social media exploitation. And then I'm going to close out with what's happening in what we call CSAM, child sexual abuse materials. You may know that as child pornography. All of these things come together, and I have been doing the research on that and money laundering for a long time. So with that, we're going to get started. The legal definition of human trafficking, right there, it is not about movement. It's more about 4 words: force, fraud, fear, and coercion. You can be trafficked from this side of the street to that side of the street. But when it becomes trafficking, it's force, fraud, fear, or coercion. I'll define that for you in a minute. Trafficking is an absolutely huge subject. I have one course that I teach to law enforcement all across the nation on sex trafficking that takes 8 hours to do it, and I still can't get it all in. And so what I want today is for you to see the wide variety. You know, many of you, how many saw Sounds of Freedom? Oh, wow, now I know why you're here, okay? I thought it was me, but no. That was a good movie. I went to see it, and it was a powerful, powerful movie. I'm grateful to Tim Ballard for getting it made. I will tell you, it is not how trafficking takes place in the U.S., and I want to make that clear. It is about how trafficking takes place in Cambodia or Thailand or in South America, as you saw. So I'm very grateful that they did it, and I'm very grateful they're successful, because they're making millions, and that'll allow a lot of money to get back into the community. And I think I know Underground Railroad enough to know they will put that money back in the community. But it's not necessarily how it looks here in the US, and that's what I want to make clear. So one of the biggest disappointments of my life was starting January of this year. For a year and a half it was, I fought SB 357, put in $7,000 of our own money fighting that. They used my name on the legislative floor in Sacramento, but we lost. That bill rewrote the penal code for lodging for prostitution, and it defines this in such a way that law enforcement can no longer intervene if you are lodging to solicit for street prostitution. It is not clear if you're soliciting to buy or sell, but law enforcement cannot intervene. That started January of this year. I was so frustrated. I'm a painter and a glass artist, and I painted a painting like 5 feet wide. I was so upset, and then we went to Montana on a vacation. I'm like, I'm through with this. I can't take this anymore, you know? But it's here, so you better prepare for it, because that means we can't protect kids the way we once did. This is an adult bill, but if you have a 16-year-old girl all made up, you can't tell if she's 16 or 19. And if law enforcement can't intervene, it's going to change everything. So there's the penal code and the actual wording of that particular bill. You can look it up yourself. It was an odd bill because it passed in 2021, and Senator Weiner actually, be careful who you vote for. He actually sat on that bill from October 2021 until July of 2022, until there was a recall election and a primary election. Once he passed, in 3 days, he was given the bill, meaning Gavin Newsom. He did not receive the bill until 3 days after that election, and then he signed it. So it is in effect. I will tell you that I do my very best not to get political. I love people on both sides of the aisle, and I got my own problems, okay? But I am upset about that bill because it sets us back a long way. So what's happening? Pimps are bringing in girls from Las Vegas, from all over the United States. This is about using people to make money in our state and then sending it back to the drug cartels. Young people are being trafficked and nobody can do anything about it because they can't intervene. On top of it, think about the number of homeless people we have. You know, you're out there anyway, you want to make 20 bucks, this is how you do it. And I very much worry about unaccompanied minors and the people crossing the border without documentation. They are traveling with people they owe money to, and instead of out there selling the flowers to pay back their coyote debt, they're going to be selling themselves. So you will find that I'm very much against this particular bill, but I can't stop it other than make you aware of it. There is a bill that we almost lost on, SB 14, and it intervened. God intervened, I'm convinced, because it failed in the Public Safety Committee just 2 weeks ago, and for whatever reason, Governor Newsom intervened and called an emergency meeting, and that bill was then advanced to the Public Appropriations Committee. This bill will make it so human trafficking of a minor is considered a serious felony. That is not a feel-good term. That is a legal classification of a crime. And up until now, we have not been able to get child sex crimes to be serious or violent in the state of California, meaning you get enhanced sentencing, you get the 3 strikes law. Has not been so, but we think we're going to be able to get SB 14 through. So just to bring you up today. So we're going to go right into foreign national trafficking. The number one thing that you will hear from a victim of foreign national trafficking, whether they're from Asia, China, Taiwan, Cambodia, Guatemala, Russia, Croatia, the number one thing you will hear is, I have to do this or they're going to hurt my family back home. So before we go into foreign national trafficking, let me make something very clear. I love all people. I know a lot of people of various ethnicities. This is not about an ethnicity. This is about specific cartels and how they operate. And what you will find is that ethnicities will prey on their own. In other words, it's because you trust your own. You know, if somebody came to me from Croatia and tried to sell me something, I'd be suspicious. But if they come to me from Corona, I go, oh yeah, they're okay. And it's how we are. And so that's how foreign national trafficking works. So that line you need to remember, because they're the hardest victims to work with because they're afraid to cooperate. Regardless of what country they're from, invariably what happens is they come from a poor family, and that family will raise the money, usually by getting a debt through the cartel. And they will bring their young people over here or send them over here in the hopes that they'll get a good job and everybody pays back the cartel and everybody's happy because now they live in America and everything worked well. That's when it works well. But when they don't get in, or when they get in and are controlled by a coyote, those coyotes demand more money. If you do not give them that extra money, they will literally murder the family back home. And they will film it and show it to you by live streaming now that technology is connected. That's why you're going to hear that. So the first thing I want to talk about is the difference between smuggling and trafficking. So I will tell you I'm very concerned about what's going on at the border. I have served under at least 3 presidents now, maybe 4, but probably 3. And I have not ever seen it like it is today. Human smuggling is not necessarily trafficking, even though you hear it that way on the evening news. What happens in smuggling is that you come in and you pay your coyote money, and with a little luck, they let you go. I know it's not a popular opinion, but we do have a federal law, and you are a criminal because you've broken that law. But you are not a victim of trafficking at that point. However, if your coyote brings you in here and he doesn't let you go, he says, hey, I need another $6,000 or $8,000, or I'm going to hurt your family back home. That's a threat. That's called coercion, force, fraud, fear, and coercion. And what will happen then is you are now a victim of trafficking. So in trafficking, you might have been smuggled in, but you might also have come in legally. You'll see that a lot from people coming from China and from Taiwan and that area. However, if you've been smuggled in and they're holding you and they're demanding things, now you're a victim of trafficking. So some trafficking victims were smuggled, some came in legally, some people were smuggled, but they weren't trafficked. I hope that's clear as mud. Okay, I need to pick up speed because I have a lot of stuff here, but what I want you to see is how much that the people who are here from other countries that are undocumented are controlled by social media, and this is very important to understand how this works.
We crossed into Tijuana, Mexico, to reach this shelter packed with migrant families from Central America. Most have been deported from the U.S. after paying smugglers, so-called coyotes, to get them across the border.
They spent thousands of dollars, years of their lives, and then wound up here in Tijuana with nothing.
We asked them how they found their coyotes.
This was actually from Facebook. This is a Facebook shop. Yeah.
A new report says that Facebook has become the preferred platform for these smugglers and the desperate migrants they prey on.
Like any business, the cartels have been looking to diversify their financial resources through human smuggling, and unfortunately, Facebook has given them a free one-stop shop to do that.
The going rate is $9,000 for an adult, $7,000 for children, according to people here. Everyone we spoke with had found their coyote and communicated with them on Facebook platforms. Pastor Gustavo.
So I'm going to leave that one alone a minute. The next one I'm going to show you is how the cartels are using social media to recruit our kids to bring people across the border.
Law enforcement from the U.S. and Mexico are teaming up to take down the top 10 most wanted criminals across the border. After the announcement of this initiative, CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Skanga spoke exclusively with the top U.S. border agent in the El Paso area about the new challenges that she and her colleagues face, including what's driving American kids to help cartels smuggle people across the border.
Cartels are actively recruiting on social media these young drivers. These are kids. These are American kids, U.S. citizen kids under the age of 18 that are now being recruited through social media to earn $1,000, $2,000, even up to $3,000 over a pickup of a human smuggling load, and then they face high cost of consequences.
Okay, just to let you know, I showed that film when I talk in schools. I've trained almost 700,000 people now, and a lot of them are school kids. They need to hear this so they know where it's going to end up, and that they're also going to get brought in to hustling drugs next. So this is a case of a young lady. This is a coyote. What most people don't realize is that many coyotes are female. She was bringing in some 14, 15-year-old young men. She was picked up at the border. Before they picked her up, she was able to make a handoff, and they were handed off to people who took them off, and they thought they were going to go to school and have a place to stay, and everything was going to be good. Instead of that, they ended up in a labor trafficking situation where they were living in terrible conditions. They were forced to cut the beaks off those chickens all day long and shovel out the chicken coop. So with that, I want you to listen carefully to this video because the young man asked for help. And I think that's amazing. We're making progress with this new generation of young people coming across where they'll actually ask for help. We need to be prepared to help them.
A tu papá le voy a ir a dar unos 2 o 3 plomazos. Él estaba asustado y él estaba preocupado, llorándome a mí, llamándome que yo luchara yo por él. Entonces yo le dije que sí, yo voy a tratar la manera. Entonces yo tuve que hablar con el sheriff.
One day I received a phone call. There was a gentleman that had a nephew that had been smuggled into the country from Guatemala and was being kept to work against his will in Ohio. And within 24 hours, I had a conference call from the head of the FBI, HSI, and the U.S. Attorney's Office in that region.
2 months later, federal and local law enforcement moved in.
A human trafficking bust at an egg farm in Maryland.
In the early morning hours, they raided the trailer park where the teens had been living.
Federal prosecutors call it modern-day slavery.
Their paychecks kept by their traffickers.
They detained approximately 45 people.
The human trafficking operation was run by a third-party contractor hired by Trillium Farms.
At least 10, they determined, were victims of trafficking, including 8 minors.
And the U.S.
So that I'm heartened by that particular case. Number one, this young man somehow got a phone. I don't know how that happens. Almost always, the first thing they do is take all communication from you. But when they got the phone, he called for help. Did you see that? They're going to shoot my father in the head 2 or 3 times. If that's the situation, a lot of times they won't ask for help. Coyotes and the cartel are especially vicious to these people. I keep saying to people, just because they're on our soil does not make them safe in many of these conditions. Now, it did take 2 months to put the whole thing together, and if you think your father is going to be shot, that is a long, long time. I get it, but I also work with law enforcement, and I know what it takes to make one of these cases. You know, they need search warrants. They can't just go charging in there and wanting to do some vigilante kind of thing. They needed to place people undercover in there. Get some officer to go out there and cut the beaks off chickens all day, okay? And also to understand what's going on in Guatemala and understand what's going on with the corporation so they can actually get a prosecution, and that is what happened. So I want to show you one that happened right here in Colton, California. This started out of a massage parlor out of Ventura. And one of the things that I have seen over the years of working with law enforcement is that they become a lot more sophisticated in understanding these large-scale rings and what it takes to make them happen. So they could have gone into Ventura and just shut down that massage parlor, but they didn't. They pulled back, they saw a victim, they were able to rescue that victim, but then they began to find out where's the money. And that is very true as we get into massage parlor kind of trafficking. So this started in Ventura, but the headquarters was in Colton. So what happened here is the mother of the top 2 individuals there is a woman connected to the cartels in Mexico. Nice little grandmother type. Many of these foreign national rings are ran by matriarchs and by women. She would go throughout Mexico and she would tell her lady friends, look, let me bring your 14-year-old daughter up to the U.S. My family has several businesses. We'll get them a place to stay. We'll help them get through the Coyote network, and we will help them get some income and go to school. Well, they had several businesses for sure. When they got here, what really happened is they became broken. And we're going to start into the hard part of these conversations here, so brace yourself. By the way, I want you to be real good to yourself tonight, because this is hard stuff we're going to hear. But what happened is these girls were gang raped. They were filmed. They were put out on sex ads, just like these right here. I want to show you a couple of things. This is one of the few sex ads I put in here. But I wanted you to see a little bit about how much we progressed. In the old days with the task force, this was on something called Backpage. And it wasn't so erotic and pornographic in those days. And every day I would go on and I'd go to see who was for sale in Riverside that day. And I'd shoot it off to the sheriff department so that they could go out, or if a girl looked like she was in a lot of trouble or very young. But now it's all automated. And on top of it, they shut down Backpage, and all these sex ad companies went off to Belize and Bulgaria and Romania and Ukraine and China and Russia, where they don't care what you're doing. And they're particularly vulgar, so I don't go on them. I don't want to expose myself to that. And I don't want an artificial intelligence of being interested in that. But what happens is they break these girls and they put them out on ads. Now what happens is, thanks to Thorne, which is Ashton Kutcher, I'm jealous as heck, he's got all kinds of money, and he's cute too. Anyway, what he does is he funded software. So algorithms, because what they'll do is they'll see that number 909-934-7641. In the morning, they'll get reports, meaning the sheriff department, of all the places that number is advertised. And, if there's names, all the names of where they're advertised, so that they can begin to take a look at these sex ads without having to see all this. Well, the bad guy knows this works too, so what do? They go out and put hearts and lips and all kinds of things in the ads to try to stop our algorithms, just to let you know that's how it worked. Well, these girls were advertised out there online. Look at this. They were operating not just in massage parlors. I mean, look at that cool sculpting. Really, I've never seen that as a front for illicit sex, but it was. So these girls are being moved around about every 6 to 8 days to the different businesses. They have clients all day long. They're about 14, 15 years old. They may have anywhere from 7 to 10 clients a day. They don't get any of that money. That's not their money. That is money going back to the Mexican cartel. So all of the money that's being generated, not all, but a large portion, is going through this little kid's clothing shop out of Colton, California. And then we went in, and I was very proud of all the teams. So here they are, right there. It takes a lot to take this down. And I'm very proud of them because they didn't go in and just close one down here or one down there. They put them all together. Then they took victim service providers out with them that spoke Spanish, that could alert with them. They went in undercover and then brought all the girls in, rescued them, and like that. So people smuggling is a form of human trafficking. It is estimated to be a $4 billion business with a B. Okay, just the smuggling end. That doesn't include drug trafficking or sex trafficking and all the other ways these cartels are making money. One of the things you'll hear me say on the radio regularly is, I am concerned. That is a massive amount of money being ran through our society, and then somewhere the cartel gets bigger. What are they doing with that money? They're becoming more sophisticated, technically, part of it. So just because they're here doesn't mean that they're safe. Now, I do an entire course. I'm the statewide trainer for code enforcement. And I do a whole course just on buildings called Suspicious Buildings. It's all about smuggling houses, and I want you to see what is going on. Because many of these people, when they don't pay their coyote, are held in a house till they come up with the money. And it's not small change. I mean, some of these people, I read one case, this girl had 2 kids, she was 30. She's being held in a house with 56 men and her 2 children, 1 woman. She had paid $30,000 to get here, and they want $6,000 more before they release her, being held with 56 men. I had an individual, I won't say who, that told me that he had a brother that was being held in a drop house in Georgia, and there was a man in that house that couldn't pay. They took a hatchet and chopped off his hand and threw it against the wall in front of everybody and said, you don't come up with the money, you will be next. These smuggling houses are especially dangerous in your community. So I want you to understand how this works. I'm not gonna play that because I'm a little behind. But what you'll see is these are houses, there's usually 3 of them located in a similar neighborhood. And they're bringing people in. So it'll have, usually near a freeway, it'll have an attached garage because cars or vans are coming and going, loading and unloading people. They may have somebody standing around, being the guard, reading the paper, having a smoke. There may be a guard dog. I had one case where I trained animal control, haven't for a while, but I used to. And they had a pit bull call, which turned out to be the La Familia, that's my favorite restaurant, sorry. La Familia cartel, must be hungry. Anyway, La Familia cartel, because we sent out a animal control. So these are things you look for. They're closed off. They don't have family kind of atmosphere. They have vans come and go late at night. The windows are usually covered over. They may be screwed shut or nailed shut. on the outside to keep the people from the inside from getting out. So those are all things that I want you to think about. So what can you do about it? Do not get yourself involved, okay? Do not do that. You're dealing with cartels, and I don't want anybody to get hurt. But pay attention to your neighborhood. You know, do you have a home that's a rental and suddenly changes, and the people aren't really acting normal, and yet there's vans that come and go? You know, call your police department in a non-emergency and just say, you know, I see this. Or notify your code enforcement. We're training all the code enforcement to watch for this. People in your community can be being held, and you will not realize that. So I want to just show you illegal pot grow. We have in Riverside and San Bernardino County over there. Anyway, almost 90% of all our illegal pot grows are operated by Chinese people. That's not a slur to them. These people are being trafficked. But they are Chinese people who speak Spanish. And there is a connection between illegal pot grows and also human trafficking. This is Riverside.
In an upscale suburb in Riverside County, California, sheriff's deputies raid a house they suspected of growing illegal marijuana. Inside, they tell us, they find thousands of plants and 4 workers from mainland China who they suspect are being trafficked. And deputies say they've raided hundreds of similar grows.
I would estimate that about 90% of them are operated using human trafficking labor.
In our months-long investigation, we spoke with law enforcement in California, Washington State, Oregon, Arizona, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Colorado, which all report seeing suspected Chinese trafficking victims on illegal black market grows. California's Department of Cannabis Control, the state agency that licenses and regulates pot businesses, confirms to NBC News weed from illegal grows in California is making its way into the legal supply in the state, a process they call inversion, which they say is rare. Trafficked workers we spoke with tell us they were recruited online. Grad student Amy Kim translated a Mandarin language job site for us.
I directly type in dama, like marijuana. Okay, these are from Oklahoma.
Oklahoma?
Yeah. And it says location is good and you can happily earn money. I'll help you with selling.
Oh, wow. We contacted the numbers on the websites we saw, but neither got back to us. Attorney Wang Xiaosheng represents human trafficking victims and says many of these workers are more vulnerable than ever.
Many of these people worked in the restaurant industry and lost their jobs during COVID. They'll take any kind of job that promises good pay, even if they don't know much about it.
In Los Angeles, NBC producer Arnie Hakela and I met one group Wang represents. 7 Chinese workers who said they were desperate for work because they had to pay back the people who got them into the U.S. All ended up finding a job on an illegal grow in New Mexico, where they were trafficked and subsequently arrested on a raid. How many of you owe money to somebody else for either bringing you to the United States or for helping you find work here?
Yeah, they all owe money.
Our understanding is this is happening a lot. Have you heard examples of other people having the same kind of situation and treatment?
In the beginning, they had never even heard of marijuana, but now having gone through it, they know it's very far-reaching. They know a lot of people who have been cheated the same way they have.
These 7 spoke.
So we'll leave that alone. I'm going to play this. That was
New tonight
labor
at
trafficking.
8:47.
Can also be sex trafficking.
People sleeping on the floor and 17,000 marijuana plants. It was all part of a massive pot bust in Stanislaus County. Deputies raided the illegal marijuana grow east of Empire on Friday. Investigators found 34 people working at the operation, including 2 children. Many of them didn't know where they were and weren't allowed to leave the property. 3 people were arrested.
So I want to add one more thing here, and that is something we never hear about, and I've been saying this now for over 10 years. I started with the task force out in Coachella because that's where I figured the whole thing was starting. I turned out to find out a lot of it's in our own high school. But men get trafficked too. And I want to make that very clear because there's very little emphasis on rescuing them or getting them any kind of services. He said he had a cigarette burn on his thigh, a scar that ran up his shin. He remembered the day he escaped a remote ranch in Texas. He was held captive by 4 human traffickers. He worked without pay for 5 months picking vegetables at gunpoint. He was beaten. He was raped. He was burned with cigarettes. He was a victim of a sex crime and they treated us like animals. We have to really understand that this is happening in front of us. Now I want to move into massage parlors because I really have a heart for this. They're all over. I hope when you leave today, you start looking at businesses completely differently. I was on my way to Antros the other night and I saw one just opening up and I sent it down to Chief Gonzalez and said, I think you need to attend this open house. But pay attention to what you're seeing out there. So there are about 9,000 on average illicit businesses across the nation in each state, okay? Typically, there are women from China, South Korea, Thailand, Vietnam. They often arrive legally. They'll come in on work visas or student visas. I want to take a second because I missed something when sharing to you. When I read cases like this, which I read many a day, I look at each case and I say, what can I learn about that victim? So we can share. What can I learn about the crime and the technology they use? What can I learn about the perpetrator and what can I share with law enforcement? Put yourself in the position here of these young girls. Let's say you live in Ho Chi Minh City and you're graduated from high school and you're a straight A student and some guy comes along to your family and they say, hey mom, your daughter ought to be going to UCR in Southern California. We will get her transportation, we'll get her housing, we will take care of her, we will get her a student visa. We will literally make it so possible. You just raise this amount of money. They're poor, they live in a little village, but the whole village runs together, and next thing you know, that girl is coming in with her student visa at LAX. Sure enough, they meet her at the airport, and they put her in the van, and the guy says, hey, you know, you're in the US, I need to keep your passport. They start driving, and they drive right by UCR, and next thing you know, they're in Moreno Valley. She doesn't know. And they leave her off at a massage parlor. And there are 2 women that are waiting there for her, and they're not nice. And they start to explain to her that she will have 8 dates a day. This girl might be a virgin. Everybody back home thinks she's in school. And now she's enslaved. Every time she has sex, they charge her to use that bed. Every time she showers, they charge her. Every time she eats, they charge her. And then she has sex all day and all night, and they take the money. That is how this kind of thing happens. And I hope after today, you can help me make our public aware that this is not acceptable in the community of Riverside or San Bernardino. So the victims are usually 30 to 50 years old, although I've seen them much younger, school-age kids. They'll often come in from Vietnam, China, Cambodia. They will have visas. What happens here is they're looking for a potential opportunity. They arrive in the US, they go through LAX, they are then put out into a massage service, and they start advertising them. They will move these girls about every 6 to 8 days. The reason, and so what's that tell you? They have a place to move them to, okay? These are not standalone operations, and that's very important when you're doing an investigation. The reason they're moving the girls is that they're afraid that an undercover officer is going to come in and make a connection. They also don't want them getting too close to any one buyer that might come in and rescue them. So you will see that these are connected to chains of businesses along the way where they're moved about. These girls, many of them, owe as much as $50,000. They will never be free. This is called indentured servitude. No, it isn't. It's called debt bondage. Sorry. And the reason for that is you're charged for everything you do, plus you don't get the money. And so you will never be free. And they're afraid to tell. First of all, they don't know where they are. They're humiliated. They don't speak English. They don't trust you. And they're terrified their family back home is going to be murdered or violated in some ways. So here's some examples of it. An illicit massage parlor isn't all that hard to spot. And so keep an eye on them, and don't be afraid to report them. Report them to code enforcement, report them to your police station, not in an emergency way, but let them know that this is out here. This is one of them that was in a sting. This is another one in a sting. Here's another one that I read about recently. So they spend years being moved from different cities. They're expected to serve at least 6 to 10 customers a day. They receive payment toward their debt, which is not, also includes the cost of transportation, lodging, and like that. So women continue to be transported through the commodities, the vast and sophisticated network of illicit massage businesses. So their exploitation is about $2.8 billion. This is money that is being laundered mostly through the Chinese or Thai cartels in this case. So they assist the victims in obtaining the fraudulent visas or travel documents. They coach the victims on what to say during the interview. They obtain the documents, and then they include the location of the victim's family. So I want to make something very clear. Do not go into these massage parlors and say, I think you're crooked and I'm going to go to the police. Do not do that, okay? Because this is dangerous, dangerous stuff. If they're willing to do that to people, what are they willing to do to you? So pay attention to that, but don't look away. Be sure and report them out there. So some of them arrive knowing they're going to be here. Others are surprised when they get here. They often come in legally. These are 4 national rings, and most of them are operated by women. Now that's a problem for me because I'm a post-certified law enforcement trainer. And when I talk to law enforcement, I usually want them to understand that the woman in sex trafficking is usually the victim. But that's not true when you get in a lot of these rings. And so it's difficult to tell which one's the perpetrator and which one's the victim. So these businesses are connected to each other, and that's the challenge as you get into investigating them. It's important if you report a massage business that you understand you're not going to see this thing close by next Tuesday. Because what they're doing is investigating where's the money. How are they tied together financially? And it may cover like 6-8 states. And it may be as many as 30 different massage parlors. And so it takes time to investigate these as they're doing it. They're usually standalone buildings in a poorer part of town. You might see other businesses like skincare, Happy Feet, aromatherapy. You may, from time to time, I actually saw an advertisement the other day for a massage that promised happy endings. Sent that off to Sergeant Hammond. Girls are moved regularly in there. So they're exceptionally closed off. They're not like Massage Envy, okay, that has the wide open, come on in, we're inviting kind of thing. These are closed businesses, sometimes have bars on the windows. They often have a back door. They often have parking in the back. They'll have a lot of men that are coming and going late at night. And they may keep odd hours on something like that. So don't go into these businesses, but report them. And report them to code enforcement, fire department, well, not fire departments, police departments, or you can report them anonymously through the National Reporting Hotline. The thing that I really want to make clear here is that so many of us are so focused on our own kids, and that's good, we're going there next. But what I want you to see is this is trafficking at its worst right under our noses. And this is absolutely an awful thing that I almost never hear anybody talk about except for when I go to a code enforcement conference. But I have this from a case. Now this case is back east. But one of the things I never understood about Chinese trafficking, Chinese cartel trafficking, is that there are competing entities in the cartel. They don't all get along. You know, it's kind of like our gangs. They get in gang wars. And what I never understood is how much danger that girl is in right here in her own neighborhood. In this case, the members of the enterprise would direct individuals to pretend to be a John. I mean, think about it. You're this girl that's forced into doing this, and now you get the next customer up. You don't know anything about them. These guys would pretend to be Johns. They'd go in to the women, tie them up with zip ties, beat them with hammers, bats, and other blunt objects, and rob them. They encouraged severe beatings, and the initial attack did not sufficiently injure them. And one phone message, this is testimony, by the way, this is not some hearsay in a rag magazine. This is from a court hearing. This guy said, beat her to death tomorrow. If she dares fight back, beat her more viciously. Get some results from her beating. Can't waste the money. One person choke her by the throat, the other person strike her 4 limbs to death. Definitely don't make a sound, but beat her to the point where she can't fight back. I had never understood, in all the research that I'd done and all the work that I'd done, what it was like for these women in these massage parlors. You know, I look at them and I go, well, you know, I don't speak their language, and I don't know their culture, and, you know, I don't have really, I've got to go over here and save this teenage girl. Well, I do, okay? But that doesn't mean I look the other way. This is in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and the violence is far more than I think any of us understood. So with that, don't expect immediate response. I want to reiterate that because these are massive investigations, especially if they're foreign national coming out of China. There's a lot of, or Cambodia, or we also have a huge Laotian community that I monitor down by Sage and Anzin. So pay attention to all that. One more thing that you can do, other than educate people around you, ask your city council to pass an ordinance that says that a landlord, if they are having businesses shut down for illicit sex, that they cannot rent to a like business for 3 years. Because what happens is these massage parlors already have agreements in place for when you shut them down. And so the minute you shut them down, 2 days later they pop up. If it was Happy Feet today, then it's, you know, Dancing Feet tomorrow. They're ready and already prepared to take on that lease and start over again. We need to get the right code enforcement to stop that. So this is human trafficking, child care, and also daycare. You wouldn't believe there'd be trafficking in this. This is a Philippine-run ring, ran by the lady there on the left. In this case, what I want you to see is that you want to be careful, even in a child care trafficking case, because when they went in and arrested these people, they had a cache of guns you wouldn't believe for a child care place. So don't take anything for granted, and that was true of the elder care. This is a bakery out of Beverly Hills. Who would believe you'd have trafficking there? But these are run by Philippine people who have brought people in from the Philippines. They're charging them to sleep, to eat, to bathe. They're working long hours and they're not getting paid, and they're sleeping on the floor. So here is sex trafficking ran by Ansun Kim. She's 53. This is a massive sex trafficking ring ran right here in the US. In this case, she would bring young women in from Korea. They would work in massage parlors, health spa, acupuncture. She is making a lot of money. I want you to see, you know, we go by a massage parlor and we think, oh, they're probably making $300 a night. This is massive, massive amounts of income that is going on. She had 41 defendants. This is a huge ring that she's running and doing this. So what happened is she had 19 brothels that she ran together, multiple states. As soon as the people got here, they were stripped of their ID. They're forced to work as prostitutes to pay off their debt. They were told if they disobeyed or tried to escape, their family back home would be hurt. Look at this. This thing is so big. I'm not going to play the video, but it's so big that she deposited $5 million in a small casino. $5 million. That is a huge amount of sex acts and a huge amount of exploitation when you think of it. By the way, I do train casinos, and I'm very, very interested in money laundering. We'll talk about it for just a minute. But when you see this massage place, it's absolutely massive. This is Chino Hills. This is Sophia Navas. Her and her daughter ran a massive sex trafficking ring. She lived in a beautiful home in Chino Hills. Her daughter lived in a nice house in Irvine. Her and her daughter, when they picked them up, had $1.5 million in cash that they were getting ready to launder for their sex trafficking. Part of it is being run from this house down in Irvine. Does that look like a brothel to you? I train code enforcement. Watch out, just because it's pretty doesn't mean it's clean, okay? Pay attention to that kind of thing. Look at this. Over a period of time, she placed 20,000 sex ads. That's more than 200,000 sex acts that this young lady right here is responsible for. This is not small-time stuff, and it's taking place in our community. In this case, she admitted that the women were beaten and raped. She said, no, it's part of the business. You know, it's not her that that's happening to. Most of the people spoke no English, and they were fearing deportation. This is the first one that I discovered, and to see how big these are. This sex trafficking ring is headquartered in San Gabriel. And this thing is so big, they're running a telemarketing center. So what's happening? You, the sex buyer, call in, and you think you're gonna get Susie Wong. You do. She calls herself Susie. But Susie is a dispatcher, a telemarketing center. And this is operating all up and down the state of California using ads to be able to promote this. This thing was so big that they literally had 50 different bank accounts in 9 different banks. I was speaking to someone here that came in that was a realtor. You know, we need to take a look at money laundering in real estate. If you get a straw buyer coming in at the last minute, changing hands, or you're taking back a note between private parties for $400,000 that's going to be paid off in 6 months or less, those are all looking at potential money laundering. But see how big this whole thing was. Now this should be offensive to you, so I won't play it very long. But I want to just share that with you. That's a sex ad, the cleanest one I can find. But what is happening, and what I share with law enforcement, I'll just share with you. If we have a girl, let's say one of these cases here, and they're advertised together, what happens is we drag and drop that, literally automatically, over to Google Images. And it will tell you every place that image appears online. And all of a sudden, what you can start to do is see a pattern. Is she traveling only with that one girl? Or you drag and drop that girl's picture. Is she traveling with somebody else? Are they using similar phone numbers? Are they in similar locations? If it is a local sex trafficking case, what is happening is that you will see her, she's moving from, let's say I'm in Moreno Valley now, leaving Moreno Valley to go to Colton. And then I'm over to Ontario, Hope Boulevard, and El Monte and Garden Grove. She's on a sex circuit, you know, new in town, last night in town, leaving town soon. That's a local, that's probably a pimp with somewhere between 5 and 10 girls. But all of a sudden, if you run that photo and she's in 28 different towns simultaneously, you say to yourself, how's this work? You can't have that girl in 28 towns simultaneously. What you have is a large-scale ring here that is working out of a telemarketing center. They discovered one down in Temecula. She was the telemarketing dispatcher. They use geolocation software, and they send out the drivers with the girls all up and down the state. So those are massive rings. I threw this one in because I just wanted you to see how often we drive by a facility that's kind of run down, an old bar kind of thing, and we don't pay any attention to it. This is a brothel. Literally, this is Tencha netting. Can you imagine this building netted $12 million in commercial sex? The girls were brought across from Mexico. They were very young. They paid premiums to be able to have sex with a virgin. There are stalls. The whole second floor of this building is stalls. Once the girl's in there, they can't get back out. And they are horribly violated. If they try to get free, they get terribly beat up, and a couple of them didn't live through it. But what I want you to see is watch for your bars and your illicit buildings like this, especially if they only have one way in and one way out, or a side building or an upstairs. Pay attention to that kind of thing. So I just wanted to say, $12 million coming out of this kind of casino or bar is unbelievable. So labor and trafficking victims are also forced to do other things. And this is the reason why early on I worked with DPSS and probation department so that we could create training programs in juvenile hall in Riverside County. And we did that because a lot of times you have a girl brought in for shoplifting or stealing a car or illicit credit cards, fraudulent credit cards, and you won't realize that she's also a sex trafficking victim. So this will often be with other kinds of things. So I wanted to just point out, one of the things I've been studying a lot of Chinese money laundering lately, and it is absolutely fascinating business. But ACAMS, which is the big organization for money laundering, says that retail theft, where they send people in to like Home Depot, generates about $70 billion a year for these cartels. In this case, and this is from the Loss Prevention magazine, I told you I'm every list you ever saw, but anyway, there is a link between organized crime and human trafficking. What is happening are people that owe money to coyotes, some are put out for sex, but others are put out into these retail theft rings. Boosters, fencers, professional money launderers. So each of them have a role. They'll go in and they'll steal like a big generator or maybe a nice saw, that kind of thing. They turn it over to the fencers. They set up these businesses, sometimes online, and sometimes like over in LA, you'll see all these businesses that have product. And it's all about money laundering for organized crime. So it's absolutely huge. One thing that I discovered, and I only read this yesterday, almost took it out, but I just couldn't resist. I have never thought about this. In the 15 years that I've been here, I never once realized this thing. And that is how much money cartels make on sex ads. Not the actual sex work, but the sex ad. They use these gift cards to buy them. They say that there's an estimated sex ad costs about $60. They use these gift cards to pay for them, and they have calculated that about over 1 million sex ads a year use these prepaid cards that are in there. And that is money laundering of gift cards, 60 million a year. I couldn't believe it. Now, I just want to throw this in case you want to research and take this further. This may not be your interest at all, but it is mine. I am amazed to find out. I met with the head of human trafficking through the Department of Labor, the 5-state West Coast. And he was telling me that what has happened is the Chinese cartel have taken over all the money laundering for the Mexican cartel. It started out by doing the precursor base for fentanyl. They've been doing that for a long time, but they came up with a system where the money doesn't go back to China. They'll pick up drug money for the Mexico cartel for fentanyl money. Then they turn that into what they call the black market pesos, and then they give that to the Mexicans, but they give credit over to people from China in the US to buy real estate. And this is how the money laundering is taking place on a massive basis right here in our town. And it's a fascinating thing because of the fact that money isn't going back to China and it isn't going through the banks. And if you're interested in learning more about that, you got my email address, write to me and I'll show you. But one of the things I encourage you to do here is look at this video. If you're bored one night, go to YouTube and put in the word Vancouver model, okay? I showed this to several of my family members and they just absolutely couldn't believe it. It is about the millions and millions of dollars that were laundered through casinos out of Vancouver for this kind of trafficking. They call it the Vancouver model. So MS-13, and then we're going to get into domestic sex trafficking. Are you guys holding up? It's a little warm in here. Is anybody warm? I'm warm. Thank you, I'm warm too. Anyway. Okay, hang in there with me. Let's see if we can get some air going in here somewhere. Okay, MS-13. I almost didn't include this. I trained up in Fresno this year all the child welfare attendance officers, the truancy officers. And I almost didn't put it in for the lack of time, and I'm glad I did. Because I had a man come up to me and tell me my entire town is now owned by MS-13. And I could not believe it. MS-13 stands for Mara Salvatrucha. If you're Hispanic, you can laugh at me. It's okay. I'm blonde gringo. I butcher that. But they are by far the most violent, most vicious gang group in the U.S. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And on top of it, they're not only violent and vicious, but they control a lot of the coyote movement. And so a lot of the people that cross that border owe money to MS-13 on our soil. And they don't go home. They move in and they stay with their victims. So this is an old case. I could give you 500 cases, but this one's my favorite. This girl just won my heart. She's absolutely beautiful. She had a boyfriend. She never intended to flirt with this guy, but MS-13 thought she did. They contacted her, I believe on Facebook, if I'm right, or Facebook Messenger. They are notorious for using DM, direct messaging. They're notorious for virtual private network and social media. They're also notorious for meeting up in public places, and they are absolutely vicious. They contacted her and said, we want to talk. We're thinking that you're flirting with our guys. I can just see this girl go, oh my God, what do I do? You know, do I go? Do I not go? Do I take my boyfriend and apologize? You know, do I go to the police? Will they believe me? Do I tell my folks? Do I run? What do I do? This girl went. They had taken fence posts and sharpened them with machetes. They stripped her naked, held her down, and took turns stabbing her to death. They filmed it, they narrated it, and they sent it out to more than 10,000 members. Approximately 4 years ago, we believe there were about 10,000 members of MS-13 in America. Since we have had open borders, I have seen several research studies that indicated that there's between 50 and 70,000 now. They are coming in, they don't look like they used to. Used to be covered in all kinds of tattoos. Not so anymore. Here is an MS-13 case. This is a beautiful young lady. She went to a movie. She never intended to connect with a gang member. He seemed like he was a perfectly fine guy. They exchanged information. He was an MS-13. These gangs use their gang guys and girls to recruit our kids. In this case, they took her to a secluded part of the school property, gang raped her. They videotaped that and told her that if she ever told someone what was happening, they would share the video on social media. She was immediately trafficked every day after school. They would take her to a nearby house, traffic her with 8 to 10 men. She had to pretend it wasn't happening. I'm not going to play this video, but this is the town in Mendota. When I spoke in Fresno, a man came to me and said, thank you for educating us, because my whole town was taken over by MS-13. They gathered up a lot of law enforcement and they pretty well cleaned it out by 2020, and now they're back. And so these people are very violent. Pay attention if they're in your area. So when I go into schools, I talk with school resource officers and I talk with counselors. Watch out, if you get an unaccompanied minor, especially girl, get a photograph of her as soon as it is legal. And stay close to her. Assign someone to keep an eye on her every day. Is she missing school early? Is she dressing provocative? Because she may be being forced into paying back her coyote debt. Or is she taking up with 14, 15-year-old girls in our school that she's recruiting to help her pay that debt? So that is a lot of the work that I do in U.S. schools. So I finished off the foreign national. We're going to go into domestic. That ends up being bi-native. And of course, it is near and dear to all of us because we have children and grandchildren. And so I have been working on this for a very long time. This is absolutely heartbreaking. I do want to thank this lady that gave me a fan. I'm sorry about the rest of you, but it's much better now. I was starting to sweat there. Okay, here we go. Domestic sex trafficking. Our kids and adults, not just kids, adults get in this too, end up in sex trafficking. So California has a law that says anytime a minor is engaged in commercial sex, that they are automatically a victim of human trafficking. Anyone under the age of 18, 17.999. That's an important number because I get leads all the time from mom calling and says, my daughter's going to be 18 next month. We need to hurry, okay? Because the laws are different if you're 18 or 17.9. I don't care if you're 15 years old and you're out doing what you want to do. If you're engaged in commercial sex, even willingly, you are a victim of human trafficking in the state of California. The problem with that is that we have a law that says law enforcement can't force any victim of trafficking to ask for services or allow us to go in and intervene. If they don't want to cooperate, it gets very difficult. And that puts a lot of pressure on all of our officers to build rapport, build trust, to lure them back out of the life. And in my case, I do everything possible to educate you so that your kids and your grandkids do not end up in this kind of thing. In Southern California, 90% of our cases are gang-related. And this is very serious when you understand what is going on here. It is all about gangs using our kids, breaking our kids, and selling them out to make money to support the gang, which is now often connected to a cartel. So gangs are changing. I was laughing the other day. Remember the old boom box? You know, some of you people old as I am. I mean, they used to stand around the street corners with boom boxes. They had baggy pants and chains. You could tell a gang guy, okay? I didn't like that anymore. They're not even using all the same normal tattoos. And now they use encryption, virtual private networks. They have a lot of technology that they share between them. So they decided to actually change the way they do it. Because of technology, many of our cases are ran from prison. Our gang members are pimping out people while they're in prison, and it isn't going to be long until some of our prisons are going to give them iPads. It's just insanity to me that we see this kind of thing, but that's where we're at. So I wanted to point this out. This is a quote, not from me, but from Modern Diplomacy. I shared this with Sergeant Hammond, my boss, and he said this is absolutely true. Something that our society is not paying attention to is with the open border, most of our gangs are aligned with major cartels. And that's true when you get down to the Asian boys down in Long Beach, the Cambodian gangs and like that. They're aligned with cartels so that when our girls get trafficked, the goal is to make the money not just for the gang, but to support that cartel. Now this is an older case, but I choose this case because I want you to see the magnitude of how this can go. In this case, this was Fresno. This was Chief Dyer that cleaned this up. He's now Mayor Dyer. I think the world of him. But what happened in Fresno is the gangs would use their gang guys to pretend to be good-looking guys on the internet at the mall and lure in young girls. And these girls think they have a boyfriend. And they're all excited and they're wonderful and it's important to be part of a gang and they have power and they get attention and like that. And before you know it, they are broken. They are gang raped. They are initiated into the gang. And everybody watches. And now they are put out on the market. In this case, it was at a high-end hotel. Usually you think it's going to be the no-tell motel on the end of the block down there by Elsinore, okay? They did have a no-tell motel down there, by the way, I saw it. Anyway, but that isn't how it happened here. This was an upscale place, but I want you to see, oh, we got a typo there, I'm sorry. I want you to see this. This gang in Fresno was making $30,000 a week by putting girls out for commercial sex. I share this in schools with kids. How much money do you think those girls were keeping? If they picked them up, they had a Bentley, a Range Rover, a party bus, and a boat, and $50,000 in cash in one little town of Fresno. It's not that small, but it's small. Think about that, $30,000 a week selling teenagers for commercial sex. They just had another one this last year, 43 suspected gang members, drive-by shootings, murders, assault, funding their activities through prostitution and the sale of guns and narcotics. So here are some branding to look for. One of the things that happens in this kind of thing is a pimp will brand his girl. This is my territory, my property. This is from a case out of Grossmont High, an older case now. Over 100 kids in that case were trafficked out of one high school in Grossmont High. And they were all branded with this tattoo. It was about being a product with a price in the store. So this is the most common tattoo that you will see on a pimp. It's a $100 bill made into roses. They love to brag about how much money they're making doing this. So you see that, you can pretty well tell that's a pimp. If you see it on a girl, it'll have his name on it. Same thing with a crown. By the way, just because a guy has a crown doesn't make him a pimp. He could be a Christian, okay? But oftentimes you will see a crown like this with his name on it, and that is a pimp crown for what it's worth. Diamonds will have his name on it, and this is cash rules everything around me. So if you see something like this involving a gang, do not get involved. You know, it just terrifies me to think about Grandma being down at the motel taking on the cartel. You know, she gets all excited when we talk about it, and she's going to go get those guys. There are ways to handle this, okay? But do not get involved. These people play for keeps. Even myself, with my radio show, I protect myself. I talk on gangs and cartels. I train law enforcement, so I protect myself, and I carefully choose how we go about doing this. Easy money is like cheese. Talk to your kids. The first thing these guys will do is it looks like a boyfriend, and I will talk about grooming here in a minute. In fact, I'll just go on with it. One of my books, it's an older book, but it's still very, very pertinent. And it is Seduce the Grooming of America's Teenagers. People think they come along and kidnap you. Can't happen, but not normally, not in the US. It looks like a relationship. And all of a sudden, your 13-year-old daughter has a 23-year-old boyfriend. And you're going, I don't like this guy. I don't like the way he talks to you. And he's too old for you. And you get in that tug of war, and you're saying, you're grounded, clean up your room. And he's saying, hey, baby, you're hot. Which one do you like? And so you're going back and forth. What I share with parents is, you're not arguing with her, and you're not arguing with him. You're arguing with the fantasy that he created in her. All the stuff she's going to go and do and be. When a parent gets in a tug of war with a fantasy, they're going to lose if they don't know how to unpack that fantasy. That is called the grooming process. It is not a popular word these days in some communities, but it is a true case of how they condition people, how they prepare people, how they create a fantasy that gets them to do what they normally would never do. So before you start feeling superior, by the way, that's exactly how romance scams work, whether you're a guy or a girl too. I do a whole course on romance scams for adults and talk about it on my radio. But they get you in this kind of thing about, oh my gosh, you only known him 3 days, but you're about to marry this guy. And that's how that works, that fantasy they build up into you. So talk to your kids about how gangs operate, who they are, show them connected to the cartels on there. Talk about easy money. It's like cheese in a mousetrap. It looks really good till your head's caught in there. You need to understand, I always say with kids, easy money will be the hardest money you ever earn, and it will affect you. Gangs use their gang guys at school, online, in the mall to recruit. So I share with kids that really this is all about a fantasy relationship. And it's important to understand how all that works. I'll share with you a case I had. I love this case. I share this with kids at school, by the way. We were all on TV, but this guy down in Nuevo, he was a real cowboy. It's been a while back. We were all on TV together. He was a character. Anyway, he called me and told me all about this deal. He had a 12-year-old daughter, and this daughter was on Omegle and Kick. Now, Mom and Dad, if you don't know what Omegle is, write it down, look it up, but don't have other kids in the room. O-M-E-G-L-E. Omegle. Nobody ought to be on it. She's 12, she's on it. So it's literally America's kids talking to total stranger while mom's at the grocery store. It's awful. Anyway, she's 12, she's on it. And so Dad read my book, he's panicked, and he sets her down, and he didn't take her phone, he just said, honey, I don't want you on this, okay? Well, instead of cooperating and saying, okay, she went to bed mad, and she decided to contact a guy that she's been talking to on the internet that she believes is 16 from San Diego. And so in the middle of the night, true story, this man heard her window shut. He said, I raced down the hall and she was gone. He said, I didn't even dress, I just ran out to my car. I got in my car and I backed up and I looked down the street and there was my 12-year-old daughter getting in the car with a total stranger at 3 o'clock in the morning. He said, I went crazy. I just went crazy. I raced down there, I slammed on the brakes, opened the door, and I just punched that guy out totally, okay? And here he is. I love that dad, by the way. Thank you for paying attention to what your child is doing. Well, I show this to kids because this guy's telling her he's 16 from San Diego. What do you think? This guy is 27 and he's a registered sex offender. 10 seconds later, her life and the life of her whole family, and it's important that you understand the impact on the whole family in these crimes. Her whole family's life would have changed had he not interfered. Well, what I want you to understand from the grooming standpoint is this guy did not drive up to her house, break in, and kidnap her.
Right.
No, he got her to send him a text. Hey, my dad's putting the heat on me, come get me. You know, he got her to crawl out a bedroom window, and he got her to walk literally 3 blocks down the street in the dark and get in a car with a man she'd never met at 3 in the morning when she normally would be terrified of the dark. That's why we call it that grooming process. They get you to do things you would not normally do. So what happens here is the victims are often conditioned. They're prepared for this kind of thing. They think they're going to get a relationship, and then when the violence begins, they don't know what to think. And many of them will blame themselves, just like a domestic violence victim. You know, it was my fault. What was I thinking? I honestly heard a survivor several years ago that I never forgot. Beautiful little 14 or 15-year-old girl, beautiful girl, and she's all beat up. And this girl said, you know, I don't know what I was thinking. I knew I had a $500 a night quota, and I quit at $400. And you're just listening to this going, really, honey? You know, and pretty soon she said, tomorrow night I'm gonna make $600 and I'll be his favorite. It's that kind of, I'm ruined anyway, I've got to please him, I got myself into it, it's my fault, and it's very difficult in working with them. So what do they look for? First of all, you do not have to be pretty to be a victim of trafficking. These guys will sell a 500-pound purple elephant. They don't care what you look like. All they care about is, are you available and vulnerable? And so when I talk with kids, we talk about, what does that mean? You know, how do you not be a victim? How do you protect yourself? Well, you know who you are and what you stand for. You make up your mind, I'm going somewhere, I'm gonna be somebody. I'm not gonna let some creep, especially I've never met online, mess up my life. I want to do good, and so I'm too good for you, you get somebody else. What is available and vulnerable? This, on a dating site. These dating sites are absolutely playgrounds for pimps, especially My LOL. That's the one we've had the most of. By the way, that would be on your Million Kids Supporters site, the latest technology. My LOL is the latest dating site that pimps are really, really playing on. But also Tinder and Meet Me and Scout. If you're on there, you're looking for some sort of interaction, some approval, some involvement, and that makes you available and vulnerable. These hookup sites are just deadly dangerous because the very implication of a hookup site is that you're not looking for a relationship, okay? You're just wanting to hook up. And many of these hookup sites have what they call geolocation preference software. And that is really, really scary. I'm gonna show you one that's a little bit risque, but it's specific in this case to the LGBTQI community. And that is Grindr. And Grindr is not spelled with an E, it looks like that. The reason I'm showing you this, I'm trying to get the best one I can without getting erotic here, but look at this, she's 17 miles away. Can you see that in small print? What is happening is so many of our young males especially decide they want to experiment and they don't want to talk to mom and dad. And they go on to Grindr and these people will go, hey, I'm right down the street from you. You don't have to tell your folks, let's meet up. And I'll be your mentor. And we're seeing a lot of individuals that end up getting violated that way. So this is from Thorn. Thorn has amazing research. If you're talking and planning on being a presenter, be sure you sign up for Thorn's newsletter. They just came out with this LGBT information on there. But I thought it was interesting that what they're saying is they have higher rates of experience of imagery among their friendship groups, but also that they're the most to have the Finsta and the Rinsta. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the Rinsta is Instagram, it's the real Instagram. So if you have children, better know their Instagram account, because many kids have 2 Instagram accounts that you don't know about. The second one is called Finsta, fake Instagram. And so pay attention to those kinds of things. The LGBT community in this survey said that they were much more likely to have a secondary account. So, the most likely targets of sex trafficking, and this has been true for a very long time, are foster kids, homeless, runaway, pregnant, and literally anybody that's taking chances on lying or broken homes. So we're going to talk about what that means. Now I'm about to show you a video that will be the hardest video you ever saw. And I don't do this lightly. I think long and hard before I show this video to an audience. But if you are serious about being an advocate in this business, you need to know how it really works. This girl is online. You can see it yourself on YouTube at Bianca Sex Trafficking. This young girl was a victim of sex trafficking. And I showed this to you because it's the most concise way for me to show you. Now this can go wrong 1,000 other ways, but it shows you how it works. She's beautiful, but she's been in the system, the foster care system. Most likely, 60% of kids in trafficking come from foster care. And on top of it, she sought him out. You'll see she got a fantasy. Even though she's been through a lot, she still shows she has a little fantasy going there. She raised the money to be able to take an Uber from LA to San Jose, I think it was, to meet up with him. He's a gang pimp. You'll see that shortly. And he immediately breaks her, turns her over to other people. And then he puts her out. And then she tries to get free, then he gets her back, and it becomes absolutely brutal. So it's a short video to show you how it really is.
For the first time in years, Bianca Mendoza says things are looking up. She escaped from a man in early February who she says pimped her out for years. Police arrested him days later. His name is Ariel Huizar, but he's known on social media as Shy Boy.
Do you call him Shy Boy or do you
I call him Shy.
You call him Shy?
Yeah, that's what everybody really calls him. Like they know him by Shy.
The teen tells us she met Huizar on Instagram when she was just 15 years old.
I came across his tattooing page on Instagram and saw he had a lot of followers and I liked his tattoos, so I would like his pictures and then he started liking mine and he would comment on my pictures and we exchanged numbers.
Unhappy at home and after years of being in and out of the court system, she ran away, agreeing to meet up with the then 33-year-old man thinking they would have a relationship. I asked her when it all changed.
He would have sex with other girls like in front of me and stuff like that. So I was just like, okay, like it's not like how I thought, but I don't know. And then that's when he had his friends go to the hotel room and like have them like basically do whatever they wanted with me. And when I told him about it, he didn't care.
It was that same day in a motel in San Jose when she says she first started prostituting for him.
The first time I worked for him, I only had probably like about like 5 to 8 guys a day.
The assistance of an attorney, Mr. Huizar.
Huizar, seen here in court, is charged with pimping a minor, pandering, forcible rape, along with felony drug and weapons charges. In response to questions about his charges, public defender Melanie Bartholomew gave us a no comment. Police say Huizar advertised Bianca and other girls on Backpage.com and his social media accounts.
I'll be posting videos soon.
We found posts on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat. Bianca tells us he posted a video of her with a client. She tried to leave, and he forced her to stay.
So I told me that if I had anybody try to pick me up, that he would kill them before they took off with me. When I started working for him again, it was up to like more than 20 guys a day, because he would tell us, you guys have to make $1,000 and then you guys could go to sleep.
When asked why she agreed to do this interview, Bianca says she's worried for other girls like her.
Because if a guy loved you, he wouldn't have you having sex with other guys for money. He would be the one that wants to be your only one.
So that's a hard video, so everybody take a couple deep breaths, okay? I get it. But that's exactly how it works. Those of us that have worked in the business for a long time, we see this story hundreds of times over and it just makes you sad. Now, I'm here today to tell you what to do so that hopefully nobody else has to experience this. But we have to tell it like it is, because somehow we get this idea of Pretty Woman, you know? And I saw that movie, Julia Roberts, she did a great job in that movie, okay? But I also saw that she made love for $3,000, and the next thing you know, she's, you know, shopping in Rodeo Drive, and he marries her, you know? Sign me up, baby, what a pipe dream. It is not like that. It is like the movie you just saw. There are several important points I want you to get takeaways of. One is she sought him out, but did you see all that fantasy, how he's still shy boy? And, you know, so she's had time. I wonder if she met this guy at a mall, if she'd find him attractive at all. And I'm a lot older than her, but I think that guy's ugly, okay? That's me. But, you know, but she had this whole thing, and she's bought her way to go to San Jose, and now she's here, and she's unable to project out how this is about to go. And as it's getting worse and worse, she keeps thinking he's going to be her savior. He isn't. He's arranged the whole thing in there. And when she tries to get away, and this is the reason why I played this video, all of us have done everything we know to try to get girls out of the life. And sometimes they just won't go out of the life. And you know, you say, why? Well, they're locked in it, they blame themselves, they're scared to death. And as you saw, she actually got out for a bit, and they came and got her back. Will they kidnap you back? Absolutely. If you're working with someone who is trying to get out of the life, get professional assistance from a safe house. They know what to look for. You can be in grave danger on something like that. But that's a tragedy, and that's the reason I want you to see this is very real. I just, whenever I go to town to speak, I always see who's for sale in the town to let them know. This is Tiffany. One of the things I want you to see is Tiffany is being advertised out of Europe, but she's for sale in Kingman, Arizona. She's on something called Bulletproof Hosting, a server that they don't care what you're advertising on in a third world country. This is Alyssa. This girl can't be more than 15 years old if she's that much. This is Benny. He's probably not Benny at all. We don't know his real name, but he is being trafficked too. He's not 18 because he's young and fresh, but he's on the same circuit as all the other people. So pimps plead guilty. This is a Moreno Valley case. It's absolutely brutal. Lawrence Gunn, he only got 15 years, really ticks me off. This man should be there for life. He groomed girls out of Moreno Valley, 28 of our girls under the age of 18. And he beat them, he raped them, he raped one girl with a gun barrel. You know, that's important, by the way, if you're working with a victim, because if you take them to the hospital, they have guards there with guns, and they may react to that kind of thing. This guy was absolutely brutal in this case. He tattooed his name right down their faces. And then he sold them all across the country. Imagine being the parent of one of those kids and you have no idea where she's at, or if she's safe, or how to find her and talk to her. This is one of the worst cases I've ever worked with, and I did have dinner with the victim's parents on this case. Beautiful 15-year-old girl, never been in trouble. She was adopted when she was 1, and her family just gave her everything, including a lot of structure. They were lovely people, but when she was 14, she began to have risky behavior. She's sending off nude photos, she's sneaking out, she's borrowing people's phones, and she hooked up with one of our gang guys from Moreno Valley. You'll see a lot of our activity. The Moreno Valley girls are sold in Fresno. Fresno are sold down here. Sometimes they go by way of Ventura or Las Vegas. This girl was sold into 5 gangs over a 6-week period. She was not advertised online, so we couldn't find her. I point that out because I always work on the idea that if I can stop the demand, then I can stop the problem. Not always. You get into this gang trafficking, they will often trade you amongst the gang. So medical signs. Number 1 sign is strangulation, bruises, scratches, bite marks, all kinds of hunger, dehydration. Of course, we talked about tattoos, suicide, controlled, reluctant to speak. So signs to look for, we have these all out in a handout. I brought 300 of my things, so everybody could have one. But these are some of the signs, and you can take our flyer so that you'll always have that. Watch for damage to the knees. That's a huge thing. Our task force, if we're helping a victim, the first thing we'll do is film her knees because they're usually damaged. And if she runs and decides not to go to court this time, at least we have something in case we can get her back again to go to court. Bruise marks, bite marks, all of those strangulation marks are all signs. A sign that they may be controlled, male or female, that they're not able to speak on their own. They may be fearful, they may shut down. They may have an older guy with a much younger girl. That often, I trained San Luis Obispo law enforcement, and the day after, one of the officers got a case with a 14-year-old girl and a 38-year-old man, so it worked. Lying about their age is very, very common in that. Missing school, hanging out with gang members. They may have suddenly a lot of money. If they've never had their nails done, they love to have the girl's nails done. That's a biggie right there. A lot of bling, a tattoo, not communicating, not being interested in regular matters. Missing school, can't sleep, and oftentimes cutting. Cutting can be a sign of sextortion, and it also is a sign of social media exploitation. 3 biggest flags to watch for. Sleep deprived. They work these kids 20 hours a week. You saw Bianca say, we had to earn $1,000 before us guys could go to sleep. What did that line tell you? She's more than one. He's got several girls, and they can't go to sleep or eat till they make all their money. So they'll be very hungry, they'll be sleep deprived, and the biggie to watch for are multiple phones, especially now that they have multiple sex ads out there. They'll have burner phones for each ad. So if you see a kid, one of your kids especially, that comes in with a prepaid phone you didn't buy, and they have more than one, pay attention to how that works. If you ever see daddy or wifey-in-law, he's daddy, she's wifey, the other girls are wifey-in-law. So this is a real live girl. This is Tina. This is compliments of Polaris. On average, this isn't true of all commercial sex providers, but on average, if you're a minor in sex trafficking, you will only live about 7 years. You get HIV, STDs, hepatitis, drug-related diseases, and horrible abortions. It's a very, very hard life. That is why we fight so hard for them. So what can you do to help minors of sex trafficking? Follow us so that we can educate you, okay? You can see the cases, see the new technology they're using. Talk about gangs with your kids. Tell them they don't always look like they used to look, where you can identify them. You know, they use their gang guys to date and start to recruit these girls. Watch your kids' social media. Don't ever be afraid to get involved with your child's social media. Watch for signs of risky behavior so that you can get there right off the bat before that fantasy becomes too controlling. If you have a child that is engaging in risky behavior, do not think they're going to grow out of it. You know, pay attention and deal with it right off the bat. So educate yourself, educate your kids, involve your child in healthy activities. I cannot stress that enough. Get them away from the social media and go for a hike. Walk to the beach, you know, go to the zoo. I don't care what you do, but get them away from all of that and get them into real life activity. Get them in taekwondo or maybe soccer or something like that. And find ways to reinforce your ego. Now I'm going to share with you a minute, and then y'all can maybe take a deep breath here and relax, because this is easy to deal with. But I believe the 4 most powerful words in combating trafficking are I believe in you. And you'll see we have some challenge coins out there. We're about out, but we ordered more. I believe in you. I shared this with you, something very personal. When my husband was passing in 2017, he left me a sign that said, to the most beautiful, most intelligent, hardest working woman in the world, love down. I will never, ever give up that sign. It, you know, during the 2 years of widowhood, it was like, I realized what he was trying to tell me was, when I'm gone, he knew he was leaving me, he said, I want you to know I believed in you. And I've thought about that as I spent long, long hours trying to save these kids, and I thought, if I could give them one gift, it would be the gift to let them know I believe in you. Think about what a pimp sells you. Hey, baby, I believe in you. I'm going to be your daddy. You know, that's what a sextortion pimp predator sells them. Hey, baby, you're cute. You know, You're unlike anybody I've ever met. I believe in you. I want to go on in a minute and just give you a break to take a breath. He can't hear me because he's out there playing his video game. But I want to say a special shout out to my husband of 2.5 years. We've been together 4. Because he's kind enough to give up his Saturday golf game to go out there and sell you books. Yay! So I'm so grateful for him because he believes in me. And we've talked about how important that is. For foster kids, this is absolutely powerful. The other reason of following Million Kids is we have Million Kids, Missing Kids flyers. And please distribute those to everybody you know. If you're in a church, send them to all your church members. Take them there. We need more eyes on there because literally a runaway child, 1 out of 6, will be victims of trafficking within the first 48 hours. So we have been involved in locating and sometimes bringing home many kids. So if you observe what you think might be trafficking, I get this question all the time. I saw this scenario, I wanted to just race in there and intervene. Be careful. Okay, be careful what you get yourself into. These guys play for keeps. You know, if you have a chance to say, are you okay? Can I help you? Can I call someone for you? That's good. But never get yourself between a pimp and their victim. Never do that because you, if you're not trained, can end up with a lot of damage. Report it. If it's urgent, call 911. The other way you can report it, I'm in your way here to take a picture, is to do the national hotline number. I will tell you they are very busy at that number, so it takes a while to complete it, but you can do that. Other things you can do. We did the funnest thing this year. It was really helpful for me to kind of overcome my downtime of SB 357. We ran a foster kids vetting program. And I got to go with the girls to go out and buy the stuff that people donated. It was really, really cool. But we put together a comforter, 2 sheets, and a fun toy or decorator item. A dinosaur or some cute little bunnies. I mean, it was really fun. And so there was something to help a foster kid know that you believe in them. Get your church to sponsor a transitional youth. Someone coming out of high school, going out on their own. Get your youth group to take them all to garage sales, give them a budget, let them help them decorate the apartment. I used to say, get up Elvis on Velvet, but that tells you how old I am. So. Okay, but help transitional youth. If a foster kid in your church, buy them a soccer outfit or a dance outfit because these kids don't get what everybody else gets. Here's some of our comforters that we did that we just had a great time with. All of these are things where you can literally change somebody's story. You have the power to change somebody's story before they get violated, to let them know that you believe in them, that you're going to care for them and you're going to help them. Now we're going to go into societal shift and how technology handles this. We're right on time. We have just about 15 minutes left. Can you guys survive it? So my second book is called Societal Shift, A World Without Borders, A Home Without Walls. I started this book before my husband died, and I wrote it, finished it at Morro Bay when I was training San Luis Obispo district attorneys and law enforcement, who I love up there. By the way, I've done a lot of work with them. Anyway, I believe this with all my heart, and that's why I wrote this book. I believe we live at the most important time in all of history. And I mean that with all my heart. If you think about it, I mean, the fact that you folks are here and that you're willing to be leaders right here, right now, in this time in history. If you've ever thought of your life in the timeline of history, think about where you're at right now. Because I believe this is the most important time in all of history. What happened is in 2022, the world was completely connected by 5G. Now I'm in a church, so I can say this. I can't say this in a lot of places, but except for the Tower of Babel, this is the only time God has allowed us all to come together. I don't know if that's theologically sound, but there is truth to that. Because for the first time in history, our world, our kids, can reach the entire world, and the entire world can reach our kids. Now, I think that gives you a special calling for leadership, because I believe that how we train this group of young people to live in a world without borders and a home without walls is the most important calling that we could ever have. And that's probably why I'm standing here with a bad leg and old age and still here. Because I'm part of this too. Think about your life and the opportunity you have to train your kids and your grandkids to use technology in a way that glorifies God and has honor and respect for each other. And this is really, really important. Because of 5G, high-speed internet, it's changing everything. Now it is making crime and crime solving a lot more prevalent and a lot more difficult to resolve. And we'll talk about how that works. But I believe this generation will have more opportunity than any generation ever before them. But you're also going to have more opportunity for exploitation. And so how do we prepare these kids as leaders to live in this world where they can be leaders for all future generations? I believe that with all my heart. How we get this generation to be leaders will set the stage for all future generations more than any other time in all of history. So our kids can reach the entire world, but the entire world can also reach our kids. So how do we deal with that? Well, on top of it, we're giving this stuff to kids younger and younger. Scares the socks off me. You know, those kids, as cute as they are, they cannot tell you if they're on a private little video game for kids or on the World Wide Web. And on top of it, most of our kids sleep with their phone. You talk about being available and vulnerable at 3 o'clock in the morning. A world without borders for our kids is also a world without borders for literally pimps and predators and pedophiles, gangs, cartels, and organized crime. And we cannot put our kids in a world that we don't define for them. This is why I wanted to make a video, because I wanted our kids to understand how the internet is made, or a movie. I wanted them to understand how the internet is made and why somebody wants their nude photo and where that photo is going to go when you hit send. So at the same time that we're having the entire world connect, we're experiencing a technology transformation. You know, I'm old enough to remember MySpace, okay? That's scary. But think about what has happened in the last 5 years in technology. I mean, look at this stuff. I had to learn how to spell some of it, like AI, you don't know anyway. Children's video games, you know, everybody's got them. Inexpensive tablets, cryptocurrency, literally money processing is tied to almost every app that's out there. AI, AR, you know, all these numbers out there. Animated video game character pornography. Did you know that's the second largest selling category at Pornhub? I thought to myself, what in the heck is that? I thought I knew everything, okay? I looked that up. I am not a wuss. I work in child sex crimes. I am not old enough to see animated video game character pornography. It's just scary. And it's in almost every kid's game. If you want to try an experiment, Google teen porn games. And you will see there's about 700 million or some number like that out there. It's just amazing how many of our video games, you know, how many of you play video games with your kids? You know, do you see those people out there and the amount of sex? And we're doing it while they go through puberty. Hello, how smart is that? You know? So it's all changing. Mass audience live streaming. Think about how technology changed. You know, when you have Facebook, you might have 45 followers. And you can friend them and you unfriend them and you block them and like that. You go on TikTok or Instagram and literally you make a recording or whatever, your video or a statement, and you send it out and it goes out to millions of people. But it doesn't just go out to millions. Millions of people can reach back to your child. And pedophiles and predators really get how that works. Well, let me give you an example of how this looks. I was talking at a Rotary once, and I had a mother, looked like a great lady. She came up to me, she said, hey, my daughter's doing so well on TikTok. She's got 1 million followers. Not that big a deal, okay? I mean, I know people that have 5 million, 10 million, 20 million. Okay, she got 1 million, I'll buy it. you know. How old is your daughter? Well, she's 11. So Mom, let's think about this. Your 11-year-old wants to be famous. She's made a video, and now she has 1 million people that now she can not only reach out to them, but they can reach back to her. And on top of it, they can even see who her followers are on there. And I'm saying to this, and I say this in schools all the time, and if you have children or grandchildren, go home and play this game with them. If you have 1 million followers on TikTok, what percentage of them are pedophiles? Have you ever thought about that? Out there? Kids will take 25%. Well, let's say it's only 1%, okay, because I'm weak at math. That is 10,000 bad guys that's trying to reach her daughter who wants to be an influencer, who wants to be discovered. All a pedophile has to do on mass audience live streaming is sign up and wait, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, or any of the others. And literally, they will say, hey, baby, you're hot. Meet me over on Instagram, get me more of those photos, hey, make them better, okay? And I will make you famous. And that is exactly how it goes. So when you look at this, it also tells you that you are now playing on the world stage. So since we've all agreed by giving a device to our child, how do we teach this child to recognize when they're in danger? You know, it usually starts off with, you be careful on that thing now, you know, because we don't know ourselves how to protect our kids, and yet we're putting them out there. It is a crazy thing when you think about it. I talk with kids about not being available and vulnerable. Talk about healthy relationships. You know, very little conversation. I think this is important in Sunday schools and youth groups, by the way. Very little conversation takes place about how you can determine if you're in a healthy relationship or an exploitive relationship. Because our kids go into a relationship online with their little hearts like they're dating the kid down the street, okay? Well, if they date the kid down the street, they can see if they're living in mom's basement and they only bathe on Tuesdays, okay? They can see that. You cannot see that on these dating sites and hookup sites and all the other. So we talk about online of what to look for, you know, paying attention to it. The first sign, the number one sign you're talking to a predator is they will move you from one app to the other, okay? Hey, baby, you know, meet me on Instagram, get me more of those videos. What's just happened? They took her off TikTok, put her on Instagram. You're on a dating site. Oh, they're listening to everything I say. Let's you and me just send some emails. If you're on a dating site, any of you, and they do that, run, baby, run, quick, and cover your bank account, okay? These, exactly the first thing they do. They want to make sure you're not law enforcement, and they're looking to see if you're available and vulnerable. Are you willing to follow them? So they will move you. That's the first sign that you're in trouble. The second sign, they'll go, hey, this is our little secret. Don't tell anybody. I tell kids, if you can't be proud of what you're doing and who you're doing it with, you probably shouldn't be doing it. I sometimes tell them, I know this is corny, but never ever send anything on the internet that you would not send to your grandma, okay? I get it, it's corny, but it's a good rule to think about. Because literally what is happening out there is they say, don't tell. The minute you can't tell, you're in a box and they win. They can tell anybody you want to tell, but you can't tell. So that's a second sign that's out there. They start asking all the questions and you're giving them all the answers. They're going to know more about you than you know about them. They start making demands and you're doing all the giving. By the way, that also tells you if you're in a sex trafficking relationship. Because if they're making demands and you're doing all the giving, that's not a relationship, that's a negotiation, and you're losing. So begin to talk to your kids. They start sending you videos or photos of other people. Pay attention. Don't be sending any of that. If they're doing that, you got a bad guy. Run, run, run. If they want you to meet up, I cannot tell you, I'm about to close out with Sextortion. The number of kids who sneak out in the middle of the night to meet up or sneak out of school, it is just frightening. Before you ever give your kid a device, sit down and draw up a contract. I believe in you, and so I'm going to trust you with our device. It's our device because I'm paying for it. So that means I'm going to check it from time to time because I love you enough to care. But I believe you're going to be a leader. And so as you use this device, I want you to make me some promises. One is you will never, ever send a photo that's questionable. 2, if you will never go out and meet up with someone. 3 is if you get yourself in trouble, you will come to me and not do anything stupid. And 4 is we're going to do this together. I want you to sign right here before you get your device. And that has to have that contract, that agreement, so they understand what you're trusting them with. And if they threaten to harm themselves and others is another one. So in this, most often sextortion does take place online. I want to make that very clear because we have some people that still say, well, sexual assault mainly deals with someone you know, with children. That is true in the old-fashioned sexual assault. But online now, sexual exploitation, that guy can be in North Carolina, he can be in Washington State, he can be in Nigeria, and I'm going to show you examples of how that works. So through the hashtags on Instagram and pornographic gaming chat rooms, I really encourage you, if your child is playing a video game, get yourself an avatar and talk about it. And that's important in youth groups, by the way. I did a survey quite a long time ago at another Calvary Chapel, which I won't admit where, to protect them. But 1/4 of their kids, well, all their kids told me that sex on the internet was not sex. And I said, really, how come you just paid $50 for it then and you're trying to get your money back? You know, killing isn't killing, I get that. But what they also told me, 1/4 of them said that sin on the internet is not sin. I hope that works out for them, you know. But it's interesting to talk with kids, how they get this idea that online it doesn't count. It feels like a fantasy world with no accountability. And the number one thing I fight in sextortion and social media exploitation is it won't happen to me. And that's true of parents. Oh no, I think my kid's okay. Yeah, they're, you know, okay, well, yeah, they hooked up with somebody from North Carolina, but you know, they're okay, I talked to them, you know, or I went on and talked to that pedophile. No. It won't happen to me is our biggest challenge in all of it. So why do pedophiles want so many photos? Have you ever thought about why we have this massive drive around the world for pedophiles to collect photos of our children? Well, there's a word that we use now instead of child pornography. It's called CSAM, commercial sexual abuse, no, child sexual abuse materials. I'm old-fashioned, so I think of it as child pornography. Child pornography kind of implies the child's complicit, and they're never complicit in it. But what happens here is it's an underground world, and I want to just kind of show you how this works. So our world experienced a major change, and this really happened during COVID. At the same time, we're having a technology transformation. As the entire world came together for all of us, that also happened for pedophiles. Pedophiles used to violate someone down the street or a friend or a family member and keep it to themselves. But they went home and shut the door during COVID the same as everybody else. And they began to go online and find like-minded people. And they joined communities. And I cannot give you enough clear statement about how powerful that is in an addiction process. Because suddenly they're not weird anymore. These guys are all pedophiles like them. And they're connecting together and they're sharing information and they get promoted, they become administrators in these large-scale rings. So the entire world came together, so did child pornography rings. During 2021, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children took 29.3 million reports of potential online child exploitation. That's 80,000 a day, by the way. Now, that's not all parents who are calling in. About 4 million are that. The rest of them, though, is that we finally got tech companies to run their algorithms and find that image of a illicit child or a nude child or a child being violated. So they found almost 24 million images between Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat just with that algorithm. Does that give you cold chills? How big this is? This is absolutely massive. Now, a lot of it is our kids sending their photos. That's called self-generated child pornography. And so how does all of this work? Well, as the entire world came together, pedophiles found each other. There are a variety of ways they do it. Please don't go crazy on this particular slide. I always hesitate to show it to the public. But what they do is they put very visual images inside their artwork. Now, don't go take this and say, that looks like a Target logo and we need to put Target out of business, okay? I've seen that happen. But what I'm saying is they give visual images that connect to let them know. They use words like cheese pizza, for meaning CP, child pornography, insect, which represents incest. So they find each other, and what happens is they go online and they go in the dark net and they form large-scale child pornography rings. So let me show you how the dark web works. If you think of the internet as a bucket of water, the top 4% is called the surface web or clear web. That is where we live. And so we have Bing and Chrome and Google and like that. Below that, we have deep web, that's the government stuff. And below that is the dark web. You cannot just go from the surface web to the dark web. You need special equipment. If your kid comes to you and go, oh mom, it was an accident, I don't know how I did it, they're lying. You need a special router, okay? The most common is called Tor. And when you see my articles posted online every now and then, you'll see about a Tor router. That's what we're talking about, is that piece of equipment that took them from the clear web down into the dark web. The dark web, you need actual addresses. They don't have search engines in there. If you ever see a child with a .onion account, they're in the dark web, and they should be reported. No child should ever be in the dark web. All kinds of bad stuff goes on down there. Fentanyl, drugs, guns, cartels. I mean, it gets really bad, but hardcore pornography. Stuff that you and I could not even in our wildest dreams imagine, and thank God for that. Easy access to technology and low cost makes it easy to set these dark websites up. 5 years ago, they needed computer programmers, but now they have plug and play. For $10, you can get the parts you need to set up a new site. So based on that, they believe, and this is coming from the experts, that there are over 33,000 active dark web sites and over 35 million cyber criminal marketplaces. Those are people who are hacking your accounts, selling your personal credit, doing hardcore pornography, selling fentanyl and drugs and all kinds of things. So this is a real challenge. A dark web site can be set up and usually will only last about 55 days. Why is that important? Because you've got law enforcement who's doing undercover work, pretending to be a 14-year-old, trying to find out who these pedophiles are. They're in a dark website, they're building their case, and now the guy comes along and says, okay, you have to completely requalify again and prove to me that you're not a cop. And so what they do is they get a whole new site, they get a whole new code word, and you have to prove that you're not law enforcement. Here is a case, this was 22 last year. This man was arrested, and he ran a dark website. Now, he's not using any human beings in this qualification. He's setting up a bot, and you say, hey, I want to be part of your group. And his bot says, give me 3 child pornography videos and, in a private chat to verify that you're not law enforcement. Once they got that, then they would come back and say, okay, I want 2 more of children under the age of 10 within 6 minutes. All of this is taking place electronically so that law enforcement cannot penetrate. I believe that this is the driving force of why these are so large, because I don't believe that pedophiles would violate a child every 5 days. But now they're having to do this to remain part of these large-scale groups where they become famous, they become administrators, they get power, they get inclusion, and it just really expands their addiction process. How big is this? This is welcome to video. It's out of South Korea, but a lot of people in Southern California were arrested with this. You see, when law enforcement goes in and brings down one of these, before they notify anybody they brought them down, they then go out and get all the IP addresses of many people they can, and then they start to investigate and come out and arrest you, and that includes people in Southern California. This one right here had over 1 million paid subscribers. 1 million paid subscribers. This is organized crime. This is a cartel making $400 million a year selling photos and memberships where children are being violated. The other scary part about this is if your kid sends a photo to someone in this ring, your kid's photo is going to go out to 1 million people in less than 30 minutes. It is spread like wildfire. Down in the dark web, they have guns, they have drugs. Nobody should be in the dark web. I just let you know that they have now moved from the dark web to bulletproof hosting, which is basically routers that are placed in third world countries that don't ask questions. I won't go deep into it. This girl right here that we talked about from Kingman, she is being advertised probably, I would think, from Romania, according to where this is at. And yet she's selling her sexual services in Kingman. So in looking at it, I don't want to have you glaze over, but just give you a welcome to my world, what I do, is DAO is a new thing. I just saw this. We just put this out on your private Facebook thing. ICQ. That's an app that I'd never heard of. I started studying it, and it's one that they call Decentralized Autonomous Organization. These are encrypted private groups that can talk to 25,000 people simultaneously. It will be a pedophile's heyday. And so we have to keep up on how this is changing. So I want to close out with sextortion here, and I might go 3-4 minutes over, but hopefully not. This is my heart, I'm going to tell you. I do all this, I study all this, I use it in different ways, but sextortion is why I live and breathe and get up every day. It started out that our kids would just send a naked photo and some of them would get tricked and somebody down the street or a boyfriend would abuse them. This thing is so sophisticated, it makes your mind spin and what is happening. So it can be a photo, a video, but what we're seeing a lot of right now, especially with young guys, is, and more guys are violated this way than girls, but they get on those video game chat rooms. And think about it, we're doing this, we're giving them sex, a lot of embedded sex in their video game. They're going through puberty, and they're talking to millions of people we don't know. How smart is that we're doing that? And so they're on there, and what will happen is they get hot and heavy on a live stream, and they go, Mommy didn't send a photo. I didn't send a video. No, live streaming works both ways. You forgot that you're being filmed, and that is how it often happens. Again, it won't happen to me. This got really, really bad when we put so many prepubescent kids online during COVID, and so many teenagers without supervision who were bored and had access to this. You know, when you put a prepubescent child online, think about what you're doing. I have parents who will say to me, how old should my child be before they get a device? And I'll say, have you had that sex talk? And they'll go, well, I don't want to traumatize them. If they're too young for the sex talk, they're too young for a phone. Pedophiles make videos of little kids playing games. I won't get explicit. And they send that off to a kid, and if you're a little kid seeing two kids doing sex acts, you giggle because that is bathroom humor. That's what 7-year-olds do. But they're very good with technology, so they make one just like it and send it back. They don't understand the world that we put them in. This is true of the pedophiles during the COVID. You know, that's an obsessive compulsive addiction. And we're putting them online when they're alone I cannot tell you the number of cases where you have intelligent people who are disciplined, accomplished, and yet they end up going online even at work and putting these photos on there because of their addiction. So there's individual pedophiles, there's groups of pedophiles, and now there are 4 national telemarketing rings. We're going to talk about each one individually. Individual pedophiles are really scary because it's a one-on-one relationship, okay? They may want to control your kid. They may want to degrade your kid. They may want to make your kid into a master slave. Or they may try to meet up with your child. We get that a lot, where your child suddenly disappears. So we're going to talk about individuals first. In these cases, the perpetrator wants to meet up, or they want to absolutely control. This is one of the biggest ones. His name was Yu, if I remember right. Yeah, Yu Vang. He had over 1,100 young girls that he victimized. I don't know how I had time for a job, but he ruined their life. You know, he has them, you know, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, or I'm gonna destroy you, you can't go to school. I have all these photos, I'm gonna send them to all your friends at school. You know, I'm gonna show them to your parents. I need you to do this, and it gets very, very degrading. This is one of the saddest cases you ever saw, and I happen to be involved with RPD on this case and know the family. This girl was 15 years old, anybody's daughter, and it could have happened to anybody, but it happened to her. She went online and she met up with this guy right here, who happened to be a cop, by the way. And he lived in Virginia. And I don't know exactly all the details. I'm waiting until it goes through prosecution, but he died, the perpetrator. But in this case, what happened is he drove out from Virginia and he cased their house the day before. Now I want to share with you that something really good happened out of this horrible case. A neighbor paid attention. And they live on this cul-de-sac, and they said, you know, I haven't seen this guy before, and they paid attention. The next day he came back and he parked in the driveway, and she went out and took a snapshot of the license plate. Thank you, ma'am, for doing that. It made all the difference in the world. This guy went in, he ended up tying up the grandparents. These are the two over here. Lovely, lovely people, tied them up, suffocated them. The mother, they told the mother that he was a cop and that the older girl was in trouble. Thank God the mom let the younger sister stay someplace else, or there'd been more victims. She brought the girl home because she thought the cops were there for her daughter. When she walked in, they slit her throat. The girl saw all of it, okay? And they took her, he kidnapped her and took her. He was on his way to Needles. And thank God that woman had the license plate. They were able to track him. The helicopter came over, the SWAT team showed up out by Needles. He ended up shooting it all out. She watched it all, and he ended up taking his own life. This happened, this girl's life will never be the same. It could have been anybody, but it was her. She paid the ultimate price because she wanted to have that relationship online. Here's an 11-year-old girl. Their folks knew she's playing. By the way, I have about 1,000 of these I could pick. I get tired of trying to pick some. But this one, mom and dad knew she was playing Minecraft, but they don't think anything of it. They all put her to bed. Tomorrow morning is church. She gets up in the middle of the night, sneaks out with the guy. They find her in a motel in another state by the time that they're ready for church being violated. Here's a guy. He didn't know anything about the girl on the left, but the girl on the right. Guys get on there, they're playing video games, they're talking smack. They wanted to come over one night. I'll jump out into the car. She says she lives down the street, and we'll have a little thing together, and I'll get back in, and my folks won't know. She shows up with her girlfriend. She actually lives 8 hours away. They kidnapped him. They took him 8 hours away. They raped him over and over for 5 days, and then they left him naked along the side of a road. This can happen to boys, and we need them to understand. Then there's groups of pedophiles that get together to think it's some sort of game. Don't these guys all look related? They're all kind of ugly to me, but anyway. But they never met. Look at this. They lived all over the United States. They never met. But they would go online. They gave each other names, and they had thousands of young girl victims. And not one of those girls knew that they're talking to 9 different men. So this is really important to understand this. You'll hear me say this again in a minute, but I want to say it right now. Mom and dad never ever go on and say, you lousy bum, you so-and-so, I know what you're doing, I'm going to the police, leave my kid alone. Don't ever alert them, okay? That's important in these cases, because in that case, you don't know which of the 9 you're talking to, and there's 8 more coming up behind you. So, this is devastating, and this is where we'll begin to close, and then I'll show you my trailer. This is relatively new. And I believe with all my heart, we got to get off ahead of this. We need PSAs, we need youth groups, we need pastors, we need everybody to be talking about this before your child is a victim of this. And this case, as the entire world has come together, so have poor countries like Nigeria and Cambodia. Cambodia has a whole bunch of these. I just learned about it this week. The kids are being forced into doing this. Anyway, Cambodia, Philippines, Pakistan, they get their poor kids, bring them in and say, you want to play video games for a living? You'll make a lot of money. They play video games and they start acting like a 14-year-old girl, and your young man thinks that's really hot. And the next thing you know, he's sent out a photo, and bam, his life is over. Because this gets brutal beyond anything we have ever seen in our lives. These telemarketing companies, it's all about money. And they are going after some of the most wonderful victims you've ever seen in your life. Kids who are straight A students, who are accomplished, who are successful, who fall for this, and then they end up committing suicide without the parent ever knowing that something was wrong where they can intervene. So I'm going to show you what this one looks like. There's some down in Mexico. There's a whole bunch of them now out of Cambodia. This one in Nigeria. Imagine losing your son to a Nigerian telemarketing company. This is Philippines. It'll take a minute because they're about to do a raid here, so you won't have any sound for a second. So I'm going to move on here a minute. I just want you to see that what they do is they take your the image and then they put it next to your Instagram list so that you can see that you're about to be run. This young man took his own life, never had any kind of problem that we could see. I'm going to show you the video of this one.
A warning tonight about a social media scam targeting teenagers. The Better Business Bureau tells Local 4 they're now getting local reports about the Sextortion scheme, the same one that tragically took the life of a Michigan teenager this spring. Our Help Me Hank consumer investigator Hank Winchester shows us what to watch out for.
This scam is very disturbing, and unfortunately, this scam is growing every single day. Tonight, I'm going to show you why teenagers are now being targeted and what you can do to protect yourself. 17-year-old Jordan DeMay appeared to have it all. He was homecoming king, class president at Marquette High School in the UP, a football star and one of the most popular guys in school. But even this all-American honor roll student couldn't protect himself from a sophisticated high-tech online scam. One that's so cruel and calculated that this young man ended up taking his own life.
I don't know how they target. This guy was very popular. He was athletic.
The sheriff in Marquette now talking about this investigation, a situation that rocked this tight-knit community.
They target an individual on social media, and then they gain their trust over a period of time. Then the victim ultimately sends compromising photos or information about themselves, and that's when they key in on it.
It's called sextortion. The perpetrator blackmails the victim into sending money by threatening to send photos to family members, friends, and social media contacts. Jordan desperately tried to avoid the exploitation.
He sent them money. He did send the money out. And it wasn't enough. They wanted more.
Jordan had a...
All of these kids here ended up taking their own life. It doesn't matter where you live, whether you're in a city, whether you're in a rural area, they can reach you and they can reach you online. This young man had hardly even been on the internet. His parents had no idea. Everybody was home and he went outside. So this is serious business, and here I'm going to come to a close. I am going to be about 5 minutes late, and then we'll have Q&A. But I want you to really understand what is going on, because especially at the faith-based community, I believe this is where we really need you. We need you to understand that this is a phantom relationship. Our society starts out by going, well, it's his fault. He sent that photo. What do you expect, you know? Well, maybe, maybe not. We do need to educate that. But we also have to understand that this is a phantom relationship. That's an entire chapter in my book, Societal Shift. It isn't like some bad uncle came in and violated you. No, you decided to do that, and so you blame yourself, and you're like in a prison. And I share with kids, the minute that you send something online, you are in a blackmail prison. And the only way out of that is to tell somebody. And when they tell us, we listen. We do not go, what the heck were you thinking when you did this? We understand that they're in one of the deepest places of their life. I also think that churches need counseling staff for family. I take a lot of calls, and one of the hardest calls I ever take are from the fathers. And people need to understand the impact on the family. I had a father tell me, I'll never forget, I talked to him 3 hours. I'd have never met him. It could be one of you, I don't know. But he said to me, my 11-year-old daughter inserted some things, and it's been passed all over the world. And he said, I look at her like she's broken, you know? And he said, I grieve the loss of her innocence. And he said, I can't sleep, I can't eat, I get mad at myself, I get mad at the wife, you know, I don't know what to do. So it affects families, it affects people, and we need counselors within the faith-based community to deal with it. I believe for most kids, their first sexual experience will most likely be a virtual sexual experience. And if it's one that's shame-based, it will change who you are for the rest of your life. And the minute you start feeling like you're damaged, one of the most important things you can teach your child, there is no such thing as damaged goods. You know, that's a kind of a trick by the enemy. It's a trick by pimps, it's a trick by predators and pedophiles to keep you from being wholesome and healthy. So this is important that we understand that. The other thing is talk with your child and promise me you will never, ever, ever, never, ever, and that's what I say to kids when I go to schools, go out and meet up with someone you met. I have had so many horrible cases of that, but this is one. This is literally Patricia Alatorre, beautiful young lady, lived in Bakersfield. She went online, met this guy. It was hot and heavy. We know they were together once. It ended in oral sex. We don't know if it was consensual. The second time she got up in the middle of the night, put her clothes under her bed, she snuck out, she got in that truck, and she was last heard screaming at 3 in the morning. They later found her body. She had been raped and strangled and raped again, and her body was burned. So in closing, I'm going to show you the trailer, but I want to give you some real meat to work with. So here's what I want you to know. Signs your child's in trouble. The first #1 sign is they get secretive. They close the door when they go down the hall. They shut their iPad. They bar somebody else's phone. They may start cutting. If you have a child who's cutting, get them help immediately. They are trying to tell you that they're in trouble somehow that they cannot express. They may start missing school because one of the first things is we're going to send this to everyone at school and we're going to destroy you. So pay attention to that kind of thing. Changing of eating habits and sleeping habits. They maybe can't sleep. They may start running away but come back because they don't really want to run away. Another one there is they may need large sums of money, especially a young man that never ever stole before and suddenly he's taken from grandma, or he's trying to borrow money, or he's stealing from the household gold, or whatever he can get that he can cash in. Pay attention to all that. If this is happening, this is what you don't do. Do not go on and tell that pedophile, you creep, leave my kid alone. Do not alert them, okay? Do not delete the photos. I know they're hard to look at. They're your child in a horrible situation, but don't delete it. In fact, if you can, screenshot it. And then don't show those photos to everyone you know, or even a couple of people. That's your child's dignity. And immediately take your child and go to Cybercrimes Unit. Get a hold of your local police department, whether it's Corona or Riverside or wherever. Riverside has a huge child crimes unit that I just think the world of. Then everybody gets counseling, everybody. The victim gets separate counseling so they can talk about it separate from parents. Both parents need counseling, even if they're not in a happy reunion. Because once you get a kid going back and forth on who can do what on social media, you're going to have a problem. And don't forget the younger kids. Live streaming works both ways. I've had more than one case where a 16-year-old boy is being told, you will bring in your 12-year-old sister or we will destroy you. So don't forget the younger kids. Now, if your child's not coming around but you think it's true, get yourself together, get strong, get quiet, and sit down. And say, you know, I don't know what's going on here, but I see something very deep happening to you. Can we talk about it? If they can't, then you can say, I'm hearing about stuff online. Is that something we can talk about? Not judgmental like those photos, but, is that a possibility? If they can't tell you, then tell them this. Here's the deal. I love you. I believe in you. I am here for you. You are not alone. Whatever it is, I'm going to be here for you. I believe in you, and I'm going to be by your side. In closing, what do we do? This is me, only I got hair, so there we go, at the end of the day. So here's some things you can do. Discuss things with your youth group. Talk about these national telemarketing. Pull them off YouTube, just like I did. They're all over the place. It's on there. Talk about the dangers of online sexual interactions, especially in video gaming on there. Talk to your young people. Are you proud of your internet reputation? What you're posting online defines who you are. It's a resume of who you are. Talk about the importance of reaching out for help and let them know that they have the power to save other kids. I've never met a kid yet that wanted to be violated, but I've met a lot of kids that want to be leaders. Let's make leaders out of them by equipping them on what to do. Talk about why they never ever want to send an illicit photo, even if it's somebody they know and trust. If it is online, they're going to pay a price. Hold discussions of why people are trying to exploit online and where those photos go. Talk about how to define good relationships, especially online. That's very important. Talk about how fantasy relationships work and take a look at them. How long do you know this person? They're suddenly, wanting to be your best friend and you've only known them 3 days. You don't know them. What you can do when they report, listen, do not look at them and go, what the heck were you thinking? That's judgmental, okay? If your child's big enough to have counseling services, if your church is big enough, train counselors for this deal. This is affecting more people and more families than you would ever know. If your church is big enough, have a tech squad, because most parents only know to check one app, okay? Predators never use one app. They will move these kids from app to app to app that you don't know how to check. And so teach and have a tech squad that can help there. Get some private training. We talked about that by joining our Million Kids Supporters Group. If you're interested in making presentations like I do, I did a whole hour of Train the Trainer that you can have. I did want to mention that we're starting a gallery. People say, what do you do to entertain yourself? Well, I get to be a glass artist. Ken's gotten to be even better than me, by the way. His stuff's really good. Anyway, we're starting Artists Against Trafficking on a gallery, and so you may want to look at that. We have some books for sale out there if you're interested. And I want to close with this trailer, if you'll bear with me a minute. I know I'm running just a tad late. I spent 6 years of my life raising the funding for this movie, and I'm very, very proud that it happened. When a couple of husbands have stood beside me in 2 years that were really hard. But I want this movie. It has been edited so it can be to every school in America, and it's going out under NetSmart through the NetNet Corporation. And so it is online right now. If you go to sextortionfilm.com, it'll tell you all the places that you can live stream it, including Amazon, iTunes, and Apple. And it was filmed inside Homeland Security, and here's the trailer. By the way, it is the story of a Top Gun pilot who had a gorgeous wife. He was gorgeous, 2 kids, and he was sextorting 14-year-old girls all over the world.
Today's date's November 12th, 2013. The time now is approximately 7:28 in the morning. Investigator R.D. Vice President Detective Joe Phillips with Virginia Beach Police.
Do you remember that time period?
Yes.
Can you start to tell the jury what happened?
I had, a friend request from this Steve Crofton guy.
Prior to that date, had you ever had contact with a Steve Crofton?
No.
For the first time in history, we're letting strangers interact with our kids in the back of our car, in their bedrooms, in their homes.
That online environment has just created this access to children that was never there before.
Physiologically, they don't understand who is out there and what people are capable of.
It's been called a new form of sexual assault, online sextortion.
For each aside, the increase that we've seen is definitely sextortion.
Sextortion is
is probably the fastest growing crime in the world.
That's right, sextortion attempts are skyrocketing.
You know, we see cases come in for children as young as 8 years old, 9 years old. We're talking elementary school children.
As a predator, you can actually create an online profile that matches the preferences of that child.
He got information from our chats through my computer, information about my mom, about my sister. He had Google images of my home.
From 16 years ago to today, there is no wall. Anybody from any walk of life could be involved in this. I mean, we've had doctors and police and clergy.
Simply the fact of who the offender was very shocking in this case.
We intercepted a letter that he wrote to the Chinese embassy in Washington. If they would break him out, he would give them all the information on the F-18.
When you talk to me, please don't lie to me. You're a grown man, you're an officer in the Navy.
These grown men are going after these young girls and they try to kill them. Might not be in their intention, but they're killing them. And we have to stop it.
I would literally do anything to save one. And there's so many kids out there that need saving that there's just not enough of us to do it.
So I'm going to invite Sean up here now. Stop by our table and we have plenty of things to sell. We're starting to get low on I Believe in You coins, but it's a great legacy to leave to your children. This is the National Hotline. If you want to report somewhere, you can certainly report there. It is not 911. If it's an emergency, you need to use 911. This is how you can reach me also, and I'm also on Facebook. At the end of this, we're going to have some question and answers. Sean's going to come up and, or maybe he's going to stand down there. Anyway, and so I do want to encourage you as you leave, if this has been helpful for you, we will be taking up a collection to kind of offset our costs for this event, and we appreciate any donations. So with